Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto x Supergirl x Batgirl harem. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by SCARFACE 101 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Prologue. It was a cold and rainy night in Gotham City, which was actually quite common in the crime-riddled city. A large bus drove down the road and passed through some creaking metallic gates, with the words Arkham Asylum above, which was ominously illuminated by a flash of lightning. The bus's brakes squealed to a halt as some security guards and orderlies came out in raincoats to escort the new arrivals inside. What could be considered a normal transfer was quite rare, since it was Batman who frequently brought in the patients and inmates. One by one, the new arrivals stepped off the bus, their cuffs and chains clinking in the rain and against the ground with each step. After confirming their names and identities, a guard and orderly escorted their charge inside to be processed into the appropriate cell holding. Finally, the last arrival stepped forward as a doctor named Penelope Young looked at her clipboard with one hand while holding an umbrella with the other. Naruto Uzumaki, age 14. Born October 10th. Seems you're in here for murder. At your age. That's worrisome indeed. Don't worry, we'll get you the help you need. Recommended housing maximum security wing. A boy this age. Seems fishy. She muttered as her attention seemed split between the blonde boy and the papers on the clipboard. Sighing, she merely gestured for him to step forward. The whiskered teen then followed her inside with a guard close behind him. This guard however seemed to have a prosthetic hook hand and a stern expression on his face, although Naruto could tell that the man was simply doing his job. So long as he didn't make trouble, the guard wouldn't bother him. Plain and simple. The walk down the hallways was uneventful, the boy received the odd looks as expected of someone his age being incarcerated in an insane asylum. Although the female doctor seemed particularly distracted by his file, still puzzling over why he was meant for maximum security, sure he killed somebody, but he wasn't a serial killer like Zaz's or the Scarecrow. Finally she turned to the boy and asked him point blank, so why did you do it? Why kill your godfather? She asked him, hoping to get to the bottom of his character and what drove him to be a killer. Was he ever really my godfather? And for the record it was self-defense. He tried to chuck me off a cliff. He responded in an even tone, making it hard to tell if he was lying. According to his file, during his trial that was his sole defense. He claimed to have killed some man called Jiraiya in self-defense when he was almost thrown off a cliff. Yes. That claim is here in your file, and it says you got bounced around a lot at home before you were sent here. Hopefully we can get all this cleared up. I'm sure this was all some big mistake. I don't really think you're a murderer. Trust me, I have stared down pure evil here. She responded in a genuinely sympathetic tone. Same here. Kid doesn't look that bad. Here's 2 pieces of advice from a prison guard. First, never cry in jail. Ever. It'll be like bleeding in the ocean and attracting sharks. Second, don't make any friends for the first few weeks or so. Get a reading on who you feel may be the least threatening to you before you start making any buddies. The guard spoke in a professional tone, although some sympathy could be seen in his eyes. His badge carrying the name Cash on it. Appreciate it. I'll definitely remember that. The blonde promised in a grateful tone of voice, some small piece of him, hoping that his friends back home would be able to get him out of this hellhole. They were stopped when a new guard showed up, a scar across his eyes and a whiskey flask at his side. The stench of alcohol fresh on his breath. New orders from the warden. The kid goes to the special security ward where all the other freaks are. The guard spoke, his name badge reading as bowls, his words making a look of concern appear on Cash's face and a look of horror on Dr. Young's. The special ward. That's where Batman's gallery of super criminals and other metahumans are kept. If he's sent there I don't think he'll last a week. Dr. Young spoke angrily, worried for the safety of her newest patient, who was nothing more than a child. Cash, being a family man, felt a much greater amount of sympathy for Naruto than any other inmate he had come across due to him still being a child, and now it seemed the world had something against the boy, crossed his arms and glared darkly at Bowles, speaking in a clearly disdainful tone, the kid will be lucky if he lasts 3 whole days. You really want to stick him in there with the likes of Croc, Killer Frost, Dollface and all the other psychos? Hey. I got orders straight from the warden. Like it or not, that's where he is going. Don't like it? You're talking to the wrong guy. Take it up with old man Sharp. Bowles replied in a disinterested tone, clearly unmoved by their concern or by what fate may befall the new inmate. Fine then, Mr. Cash, keep an eye on our new patient as long as you can. Dr. Young requested before breaking off into jog towards the direction of the warden's office. With a still angry expression that never wavered from Bowles' direction, the 2 guards escorted the blonde towards his new home. Here's another piece of advice, kid. Stay away from certain inmates in the special ward. Most notably, the Joker, Victor Zsasz, Killer Croc, Dollface and you know what? Just stay the hell away from everybody. Cash spoke with a warning. At long last, the blonde was deposited inside an empty cell that seemed to have been cleaned almost immaculately. Just try to make it through tomorrow. Me and the doc will get you out of this. Just sit tight. I have seen lots of sick puppies come and go around here. You don't deserve this. Cash promised before departing with the other guard. The two soon argued, which could be heard down the hall. Naruto could only sigh and climb up to the top cot. Deep down he wanted to scream and cry about how unfair his whole life was. But he wouldn't show any weakness, not yet at least. He would somehow survive this and get his revenge on the ones who tossed him into this nut house. The next morning, Naruto awoke with a yawn as he rubbed the sleep from his eyes, a loud buzzing noise echoing throughout the cell block that signaled it was morning. "Sleep well, Chimako," spoke a deep voice with an accent, causing the boy to look up and see that he was sharing a cell with a hulking behemoth of a man wearing some kind of a mask that reminded him of wrestlers. What were they called again? Wait, luchadors was the term. I slept, I guess. Didn't know I was sharing a cell. The boy responded, feeling a little small in this man's presence, since it seemed like he could be crushed inside those huge beefy arms like a toothpick. Neither did I, Nino. And lo and behold. Here you are. I am called Bane. What is it they call you? The now introduced Bane spoke in a surprisingly jovial voice despite his enormous stature. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. The whiskered teen replied bluntly as he hopped off his cot, thanking his lucky stars he didn't pick the bottom bunk, picturing the masked man crushing him beneath. Japanese then. Maelstrom, no. I like it. A name of strength. Bane responded with a chuckle as he stepped outside of the cell and gestured for the boy to join him. Not seeing any other option, Naruto followed him since he didn't sense any ill intentions from this guy. Thanks. Most people crack the fish cake joke on me. By the way, I was told not to get chummy with anyone here for the first few weeks. The blonde stated with a small frown at the end of that last sentence, still unsure if it was a good idea to put his trust into this Bane character. Good advice. I know a good way to judge a person to see if they're trustworthy. Do you know how to play chess, Nino? The masked man asked as he walked down the hallway with the blonde following him, since Bane knew his way around the joint while Naruto did not. A friend taught me how to play shogi back home. The blonde responded, remembering how he and Shikamaru used to play together every now and again, and found it to be rather surprising how a game of shogi could help you understand a person better. Ah, shogi. Good. If you know how to play shogi, it won't be hard to play chess. The giant of a man replied as they entered the rec room, where numerous other inmates were off doing their own thing to pass the time. Although for the most part, just about everyone in there seemed to be bored out of their minds until their attention was caught by the newcomer. This is all, how you say. Old hat to us. We all know each other somehow or other, been in and out of asylum countless times. It is rare to see fresh faces here. Bane casually explained as he sat at a nearby table with a chessboard, the attached metallic seating creaking slightly under his weight. The whiskered teen then sat across from him as the luchador began assembling the pieces in their correct places. You go first, Nino. I will take it easy on you since you are first-timer. Bane offered, allowing the boy to make the first move. With a shrug, the blonde picked up a pawn and moved it ahead 2 spaces. What are you in here for, Nino? You seem too young to be hardened criminal. Bane asked as he too moved a pawn forward, but only by 1 space. Self-defense. Guy tried to throw me off a cliff. Court system screwed me over. The blonde replied in a blunt manner, giving the shortest possible version of his story as he and Bane took turns moving their pawns forward. That's all. Then why are you in here with people like us then, Chimako? Bane asked as he captured one of his opponent's pieces. Naruto mimicked the diagonal movement of Bane's pawn and captured one for himself and then replied, beats me. The warden had me stuck in here. I don't know why, but it seems everyone wants to mess with my life. I doubt that, Nino. No one receives special treatment. Life is unfair, no. Bane spoke with a hearty chuckle as he moved a bishop, but he stopped midway when he saw a flash of genuine anger on the whiskered teen's face. You think I don't know that? I never got to experience what it was like to have a family. About 80% of my friends are of the female adult variety, but they're all too busy with their jobs to spend any real time with me. My education was shit since every last one of my teachers did everything they could to ignore me or pass me around. And then some perverted old guy tried tossing me off a bottomless cliff, and then after I killed him, I was told he was supposed to be my fucking godfather, who I didn't even know existed. Of course life isn't fair, but when did I ever get a fair chance? And it's all because of the circumstances of my birth that I get treated like this. The blonde ranted rather angrily before he stopped and realized that he'd gotten the attention of all the other inmates. A few of them seemed ready to burst out into laughter until a deep guttural voice stamped out any chance of that nobody laugh at the kid. I know exactly how he feels. spoke another giant of a more less than human variety. This creature seemed to be some kind of hybrid between a crocodile and a man due to his sharp teeth, his glowing reptilian eyes, and of course his massive scale-covered hide. "Take it from me kid, I know how it feels not to be given a fair shot. I mean take a good look at me." The croc hybrid spoke as he stood to his full height, which almost seemed to dwarf even Bane at this time. The creature's head lightly bumping against the ceiling earning a growl of annoyance. "Wow, that's actually kinda neat there big guy. Are you a croc that became human or a human that became a croc?" The boy asked in a completely innocent manner, earning him some odd looks. For a few moments, the reptilian creature's mouth hanged open as he seemed genuinely stumped by that question until he burst out in a fit of laughter. "You know kid, you're actually okay. I never thought about that. The name's Killer Croc." Croc spoke with a toothy grin as he extended his hand out to the boy, who reached out and shook it, somehow uncaring that Killer Croc could rip his arm out with one quick jerk. "Nice to meet you Croc. I am Naruto Uzumaki." The boy responded, feeling a certain kind of kinship to this creature. Call it a connection between outcasts. Meanwhile, Croc was genuinely moved by the boy's innocent nature, not remembering the last time he had been treated with common decency, as though he were normal. It actually felt nice. Croc then rose up as much as his height would allow and turned to the other inmates. "Alright you meat sacks, listen up. I like this here kid. You mess with him, I'll kill you and eat you up." Croc announced loudly, with Bane also voicing his approval. "See, the boy be under my protection as well. Any of you dare to harm him, I will break you." Bane yelled and slammed his fist against the wall for emphasis. "Whoa, whoa. You guys are looking out for me now. You barely even know me." Naruto spoke in genuine surprise, these were supposed to be hardened criminals. It didn't really seem that way right now. "Don't care. You got heart kid. I can tell." Croc announced as he sat on the floor, glaring at the likes of one Victor Zazes, who seemed like he was contemplating on making a shift to murder the boy since the scarred killer had a hungry eyes look. "See amigo. Unlike a number of these fools, we are capable of honor. You should not be locked up with the animals. No offense meant to you Senor Croc." The masked man spoke and sent a small apology towards Croc for the animal comment. "It's cool." The reptilian hybrid responded in an uncaring manner. Soon it seemed like all the other inmates were staring at the boy like a piece of meat. "Never cry in prison, I'm guessing that also applies to other emotions too." Naruto responded, now feeling very much unsafe, even with his two newfound bodyguards. "See, Chimako. They all now want a piece of you. It is unsafe for you here." Bane responded in an even tone, his eyes skimming over the other inmates. "We gotta get you out of here kid. Or you'll be dead or wishing you were." Croc spoke in a blunt manner, making the whiskered teen suddenly feel a small chill running up and down his spine. "Ideas on how to get me out of here? Something tells me that even with you two around, I may not make it through the day. We all know what happens if you drop the soap." Naruto whispered to his new companions. "1. It's laundry day. Could smuggle you to a low-risk wing." Killer Croc offered since it was the most present opportunity. With both Bane and Naruto nodding in agreement at that idea. Best get started right away before somebody did something nasty to the boy. Later. "Does this actually work?" asked Naruto as he hopped into a cart full of washed laundry while both Bane and Croc dumped a bunch of the prison's jumpsuits down on him to hide him from sight. "For an adult? No. But I doubt the guards will be looking for you Chimako. Besides, this cart is marked for Block C, very low risk wing. Small timers really, you'll be much safer there than in here." Bane replied in a reassuring voice. The sounds of footsteps were heard outside, likely belonging to whoever was coming for the pickup. "Godspeed to you Nino, I hope we meet again soon." Bane spoke as both he and Croc retreated down the hall away from the approaching footsteps. Knowing that it wouldn't be good if they were seen hanging around the prison's laundry. Two guards walked in, with one of them speaking okay, last one of the day. "Damn, these carts are so old that the paint's wearing off. Sometimes the darn things get mixed up because of that. Which one was this for again?" The idle chatter made the blonde's eyes widen as he wondered if the cart he was in right now was misread by Bane. "Block D female only block. Sharp's too friggin' stingy to update anything around here. Asshole wants to be some big shot mayor." Spoke another guard as one of them began pushing the cart to its intended destination. "Wait, these jumpsuits are for women? How'd they end up in the special ward?" asked a first guard out of curiosity as Naruto hoped that the female section was also of the low-risk kind. "You idiot, you think these things are gender-specific? They're meant to be gender-neutral, since Arkham has a mixed population, it's not hard to get them mixed up sometimes. Although, I hear a few inmates need to get these things custom-made, like Bane or Croc. You seen those guys? They're fucking huge." The second guard replied while they continued to chatter away with each other. After a few minutes of keeping still, the cart came to a halt. The female voice then spoke, "We'll take it from here boys. And then the cart began moving once again, making Naruto realize it must have been handed off to some female guards. Made sense since his current destination was an all-female cell block. After a short ride, the female guard announced the arrival of freshly cleaned jumpsuits. Uh-oh. Naruto muttered quietly, wondering what would happen if he were discovered. This whole plan had now gone clean out of the window at this point, and he would likely be sent back into the special ward once again. Finally the cart came to a last stop and he heard the guard leave the room. Peeking through the pile of jumpsuits, he noticed that he was alone and it sounded like no one else was in here. Perhaps he could find another way out of here. He slowly climbed out of the cart and sighed until he came face to face with a figure whose head resembled a crimson skull. A ghoul. The blonde screamed in terror, only to faint on his feet and then fall to the floor. Above him stood a female figure. What was odd about her was the lack of skin covering her body, allowing one to see her muscle and flesh. Oh dear. She whispered to herself as she looked over the boy, then she grabbed him by his feet and dragged him away into the darkest confines of Arkham Asylum. Later. Wow, what a nightmare. I dreamt that I was in Oshid. Naruto muttered as he found himself seemingly underground, more specifically in some kind of basement or maybe a boiler room of some kind. He was currently resting on a worn mattress that had some blankets and pillows that looked like they had seen much better days. And then from the shadows came that horrifying visage again, making his jaw drop to the floor and his eyes widen into saucers. She looked down at him for a few long moments before simply uttering a single word, hello. Hi, sorry that I screamed like that and called you a ghoul before. Your kinda scared me. He muttered an apology, trying not to stare at her face or lack thereof. Jane, sorry. Jane didn't mean to scare you. Jane is quite scary looking. She replied, repeatedly referring to herself in the third person, making Naruto wonder if that was a mental tic of some kind. Jane, is it? Where am I right now? He asked as he got up from the mattress and strained his eyes to see in the dark. Since his eyes hadn't fully adjusted, he spotted the shape of a light switch and tried to flick it on only for Jane to stop him by gently pushing his hand back down. No lights. Guards will see. You are beneath Arkham in an old boiler room. Guards rarely pass by here anymore, but can't be too careful. Why did you smuggle yourself into the female ward? She asked him as she produced a bottle of water and presented it to the whiskered teen. Not by choice. It was all an accident. And I wasn't trying to get into the female ward. I was trying to get out of the special ward. He explained as he twisted off the cap and drank some of the water he was given. Special ward? That's a bad place to be. Lots of bad people in there. Why were you in there? Are you a bad person too? She asked him, hoping to understand his story a bit better. The quickest version is that the warden stuffed me in there for whatever reason. I met and somehow became fast friends with Bane and Killer Croc who got me out. And I don't really think I'm a bad person, at least, not bad enough to deserve being in this shithole called an asylum. He responded with a deep sigh before returning the water bottle to Jane. Warden is bad. Greedy. Wants to be mayor. But hides dark secrets. It makes for good leverage. She spoke, a smile forming on her crimson visage. Secrets? What kind of secrets? You trying to hint at something? He asked her with growing interest, prompting Jane to vanish into the darkness of the boiler room and then return with a handheld camcorder. She opened it up and began playing some footage, showing an old man beating an inmate to death. Warden Sharp kills inmates every chance he gets. Was saving this for the right opportunity. Jane will help you, and you will help Jane in future. Deal, little friend? She asked him with a malicious grin forming. Deal. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, by the way. One problem: how am I even going to get close to the warden without being tossed back into the special ward again? He asked in concern since his previous escape plan had been botched by some unlucky circumstances. Leave that to Jane. Jane Doe knows Arkham very well. Many ways to get around if one knows how. She responded as she retreated into the dark again where the sounds of fabric rustling could be heard. Thanks, but why help me at all? The first thing I did when I saw you was scream in terror and faint. He asked her while crossing his arms, finding it extremely odd how he is quickly gaining unexpected allies amongst the inmates. Children aren't supposed to be in Arkham. Children are alien here. They don't belong here. It is like throwing a lamb into a den of predators. Jane Doe hopes that by helping little friend, then Jane may feel happy knowing that Jane can be good person if she tries. Plus, little friend will owe Jane Doe a huge favor. Call it an investment. She answered him and then returned in the uniform of a female guard with a badge, her head now featuring the same face as on the badge itself. Were you a Shapachinger or something? That why you don't have a face? He asked out of innocent curiosity as he tilted his head to the side. Jane good at taking others' appearance, by force if need be. Jane is a serial killer, seeking an identity where she can be happy. Jane once tried using faces of doctors and guards to leave Arkham, but they started living on site so that Jane couldn't leave. This one she has used for the longest time, no suspicions yet. Very useful. You ready to go, little friend? She asked him and then held out her hand. He took it and nodded, surprised that he had gained an ally in a serial killer. But then he was certain that stranger things had happened before. And if it meant he could make it through the day and continue living, then it was fine by him. Minutes later. Quincy Sharp sat in his office drinking some rather expensive scotch, sighing as Dr. Young raised quite a large fuss just yesterday about that little Chinese boy that was sent into the special ward. After some time spent arguing with the doctor, she stormed off claiming she would be back with a lawyer if need be to keep the lad safe. The truth was, Sharp was paid a rather generous amount by some overseas associates that requested for the boy to never see daylight again. An easy request since the special ward was full of degenerates like Scarecrow, Zazas, and so on. A knocking sound was heard at the door, prompting him to call out for them to enter, although he hoped it wasn't Dr. Young again. Instead it was a female guard escorting that Chinese boy inside. She saluted and spoke in a professional tone, found the brat trying to smuggle himself out of the special ward and into the female ward, likely trying to escape, sir. I'll be outside if you need me. She then clicked her heels, saluted and then disappeared out the door to give them some privacy and to help Sharp feel at ease so his lips would loosen without a witness around. Ah. I see. Nice try, my boy, but it isn't that easy to escape from Arkham. Sharp announced as he stepped forward with his cane in hand, glaring down at the teenager. Warden Sharp, I presume? Nameplate on the door said so. Gotta ask, would you stick me inside the special ward with some of the most dangerous criminals around? Naruto asked with a frown, wishing to know why the warden did such a thing. Some new friends from overseas paid me a rather egregious amount of money to ensure your misery and potential end. The very same people who sent you here in the first place, I imagine. The money was too good to ignore and will be an excellent boost for my mayoral campaign. Not that concerns an uneducated Chinese urchin like you. Sharp boldly declared, obviously believing himself to be superior to the boy. Chinese? I am Japanese. Please get it right. And seriously, why is it that political fat cats in power seem to always have it out for me? What the hell did I ever do to never mind? More important things need to be taken care of. Gotta ask, what would happen if the Arkham staff found out what you did behind the scenes? The blonde asked with a knowing smile, causing the warden to pause slightly before resuming his pacing about. Whatever do you mean? He asked, feigning ignorance to the question. Well, I made some new friends in here too. And one of them has footage of you murdering inmates when no one else is looking. Anything happens to me, and they'll leave the footage where it can be easily found and viewed by the staff. Just think, you'll be dragged out of your fancy chair, through the mud and into a courtroom, and your entire mayoral campaign, if not your life, will almost immediately fall apart. The blonde spoke with a victorious smile, knowing he had the warden in a stranglehold, as evidenced by the man sweating profusely and his entire body language changing to that of a fearful and whimpering coward. And no. Anything but that. I'll do anything you ask. Sharp pleaded and dropped to his knees to beg, making the blonde boy sneer in disgust at the sight of this pathetic little man. I want out of Arkham. I want my freedom. Get me out of this shithole called an asylum, right now. Naruto demanded, almost growling as he stared down the pompous man. Of course. Anything you want. But it will take some time. A few days at least before I can secure your release. There's a process. The warden tried to explain, fearing for his career and his future attempt at being mayor. I don't care. Just get it done. And if that's the case, put me somewhere where I don't have to worry about getting murdered or ass raped until I'm released. And remember, old man, me and my friends are very superstitious. If anything happens to me, some unlucky accident, a suicide, or anything terrible in general, then my friends will ensure that footage of your crime shall be seen by everyone. Get the picture? Naruto asked in a threatening tone, his icy stare making the warden feel as though he were speared through the heart just now. Yes. Yes. Nothing shall happen. I swear. But the only other available cell that may be of some comfort will be in the female ward after Jane Doe vanished again. We still have yet to locate her. The warden explained, making Naruto look over his shoulder to see his disguised accomplice had been listening at the door the entire time. She smiled and gave him a sharp nod of approval. Ah, what the hell. I'll take it then. If I need anything else from you, I'll be sure to let you know. Guard. Naruto called out, prompting the false guard to come back inside to escort the boy out. She said nothing, but gave a look of amusement as she guided him to her cell, leaving behind an almost sobbing Warden Sharp. The next day. Kushi. Naruto mumbled to himself as he got up from his newfound bedding, which proved to be much more comfortable than the cots from the cell he shared with Bane. It made him wonder if the female populace of the asylum were given some kind of special treatment in hopes of getting sexual favors. He shrugged and then started to stretch out his limbs until he felt a number of eyes watching him. Turning to the cell door, he noticed that he'd already gained the attention of several female inmates. One of them with blue hair and pale skin giving off a wolf whistle. "Well, hello there, darling. What brings you in here?" asked a woman with vibrant red hair and pale green skin as she tapped her cheek with a lone finger. "Long and short of it, I blackmailed the warden for a cell outside the special security ward. This one was the only one open. If you ladies don't mind, I'll just be here for a few days and then I'll be released. Sorry for any inconvenience." He spoke while sheepishly rubbing his head, blushing from some of the stares he was receiving. "Oh my gosh. He's suicide," squealed a blonde-haired female who hopped inside and started pinching at his cheeks, most specifically the whiskered parts. "Harley. Down girl. Let the darling breathe." The green-skinned woman spoke and then pulled the blonde girl back, releasing Naruto from the torment of cheek pinching. "But Ivy, look at those adorable whisker marks. He looks like a cute little fox." The woman called Harley whined, starting to shed some crocodile tears as she tried reaching for her fellow blonde again. "Agreed on the adorable part. But his whiskers remind me more of a lost little kitty," spoke a black-haired female that walked inside with a swagger that reminded the boy of a feline. She then cupped his chin in her hand and let out a low purring sound before stroking one of his trademark whiskers. "Don't mind Harley. She's quite excitable. We don't get many new faces in here, much less of the masculine type. My name is Selena Kyle, expert cat burglar and also known as Catwoman. The bubbly blonde is Harley Quinn and the sultry retard is Poison Ivy." Selena introduced them before letting go of Naruto's chin and pulling Harley out of his cell to give him some space, much to the ex-shrink's annoyance. "And I'm Killer Frost. Nice to meet ya. We all kinda have a bet going on here, wondering what you're in for. Selena thinks you might be a fellow cat burglar. Quinn thinks you beat up some politician's third nephew's son with a pipe or a bat. Ivy thinks you may like to burn stuff. And I think you might be one of those guys who knows too much, if you get what I mean. So what's on your rap sheet?" The brunette asked him with a smirk, resting her head in her open palm as she leaned against the wall. "On paper, murder. But it was actually self-defense. Court system screwed me. And please, my name is Naruto Uzumaki." Naruto summarized in a bored manner, getting a little tired of having to explain why he was even in Arkham. "Damn. Hey, Cheshire. Looks like you win this one." Frost yelled down the hall, causing a young woman with olive-colored skin and bushy black hair to appear. "Take it from an assassin, I knew he had blood on his hands." The young woman referred to as Cheshire spoke with a somewhat triumphant smile. "Alright then wait, what did you bet exactly? I'm guessing you don't get a lot of contraband to gamble with around here." Naruto asked with a curious expression while crossing his arms slightly. "True enough. Which is why you were the prize." Cheshire replied as she grabbed him by the collar and then dragged him out of his cell, leaving behind the other female inmates to groan at their loss. Cheshire right. You can let go now. I'm not a pet or anything you can just pull around on a leash." The blonde groaned in some dismay, feeling slightly humiliated for being dragged around. He was supposed to be a ninja for crying out loud. Would it be so bad to be a pet? You'd get to sleep and eat all day and get all the affection and love you could possibly want from your owner. The female assassin quipped with a smile that seemed rather befitting of a Cheshire cat. "Okay, I'll give you that one. But what are you actually going to do with me?" the whiskered teen asked, looking over his shoulder up at his newest associate. "Well, I might have a few ideas. The day is young, prison time is slow time, and I have some things I need to confirm." She replied with a small smile, making the boy wonder what she meant by that last line. What was it she needed to confirm? For now, it may be a good idea to just go along with her. He didn't really sense any malicious intent from her or any of the females on this block really. Much like when he interacted with Bane, Killer Croc and Jane Doe. It was almost as if he could feel their emotions and felt some kind of a strange connection with each of them. What was happening? Why was it he was making friends and allies inside of a few short days in an asylum when it took him his entire childhood to make any friends in Konoha? He was snapped out of his musing when Cheshire opened a set of door, revealing another boiler room, although this one was much hotter than the one that Jane Doe had been using as a hideaway. Guess this boiler room was used much more or was just more active. Why are we in here? And seriously, how's it you people can just walk around wherever you like? The blonde asked in a deadpan tone, since it was obvious a number of inmates could walk around wherever they wanted without any guard interference. In reverse, most of the guards are too lazy and won't bother dealing with us unless there is a fight or an escape attempt. And we are here to train. You are a ninja from the elemental nations, am I correct? She answered him and then unzipped her jumpsuit, letting it pool around her ankles, leaving her in only her undergarments. Yeah. For some reason, most people don't even know about the elemental nations, come to think of it, I don't think I even mentioned being from there. So how did you know? And did you seriously need to strip down? He asked with a large blush forming on his cheeks from the heat of the active boiler and from seeing a half-naked woman. Well, it is much easier to move around without this horrible orange jetted. What's wrong? Does it bother you to be in the presence of a female like myself? Do you feel all hot and bothered because of the hormones in your body? And as for how I know, that's my little secret. She replied with a coy smile, almost as if she were amused by his flustered state. Placing her arms behind her head and adopting a sexy pose to further tease him. Shaking his head and trying to ignore the heat growing in his body, the blonde asked in order to change the subject, so what's the training exactly? Stealth training, of course. I am an assassin after all. I'll make things more interesting by making a game of it. A game of tag, to be more precise. If you manage to find and tag me once, then I shall be your slave during your time here. But if I win by tagging you 3 times, then you must be my slave until you leave Arkham. Deal? She asked him, stalking closer to him, like a predator toying with its prey before the kill. High stakes. And why the handicap? I only have to tag you once to win. He replied while crossing his arms, gulping slightly when her face was but a few inches from his. Some droplets of sweat forming on her skin from the boiler's heat and the stuffy air. High stakes indeed, which makes it more fun. And I am a highly trained assassin, you are still young. You must still be a rookie. Even if, on the slight chance that I lose, perhaps we can still gain some mutual enjoyment. Now, unless you want to lose inside a minute, I suggest you discard the jumpsuit. It'll be easier to hide in the dark without it. She replied before drawing back and disappearing within the shadows. For some reason, this game reminded him of when he and Anko would do some survival training in the Forest of Death. She would always win, of course, but it was still fun. Time to do the Snake Mistress proud. He unzipped his jumpsuit and kicked it off, quickly dashing towards the nearest hiding spot in the dark. He crouched down and listened very carefully for any sounds of movement, since it was rather hard to see with what little illumination came from the boiler. Without any luck finding her, he decided to move on, lest she discover his current hiding place. He barely made it 3 steps and was then shoved to the ground by Cheshire, who vanished as quickly as she appeared. You breathe and walk a bit too loudly. I could easily slit your throat if you were an enemy. She spoke out, although it sounded like her voice was coming from everywhere, making it impossible to pinpoint her new hiding spot. The blonde thought for a moment, knowing that there was no way he'd be able to find her and win at this rate. It then came to his mind that in order to win, he would need to play dirty. And he still had one thing she didn't. Sheer numbers. He quickly ran through some hand signs and whispered shadow clone jutsu. A large cloud of smoke appeared and in place stood a small crowd of Narutos, all bearing smirks on their faces. As they spread about the boiler room to find their prey. In the darkness, Cheshire smirked at his desire for victory, even if it meant cheating. But then there were no specific rules in place. She looked up and decided it would be better to take to the high ground and wait out his clones. The real one would soon reveal himself. I found her. Came the shout of a clone that was hidden in a blind spot she hadn't paid attention to. Cursing her lapse in awareness, she tried to make a dash for it, only to be quickly dogpiled by the clones who pinned her to the ground. Seems I'm a bit out of practice. She muttered to herself with a small smirk, guess that's what happens when you get a bit too comfy sitting around in a cell and getting 3 square meals a day. Another Naruto then appeared in front of her and then touched her on the nose with a large grin. Oop. You're tagged. I win. He spoke and then the clones instantly popped out of existence in puffs of smoke. Shaking her head slightly in amusement, she got up and stretched out her limbs a bit. Alright. I concede defeat. And I'm a woman of my word. What shall your first command be, my master? She asked with a small bow, her eyes never leaving his face. And it seemed like his cheeks were a deep shade of red that was visible even in the dark. You said something about being an assassin, right? I wouldn't put it past the warden to try something against me, so until I'm out of here, help keep me safe and all that, yeah? The blonde requested, earning a nod from the Kunoichi. She then sauntered up to him and pressed her bust to his chest, her face just as red as his own, as thick droplets of sweat rolled down her smooth olive skin. Damn. Is that what it's like to have a slave? He asked more to himself as he pulled his boxers back up. Almost wishing that it didn't have to end when he left Arkham. Cheshire rubbed the crook of her neck where he had bitten her and stood up with a slightly dazed look, as if she was coming off of a high. You know, there may be a place for you in the organization I represent. The League of Assassins. If you prove yourself worthy, you may become the successor to the Demon's Head. She offered with a serene smile, knowing that he had the potential after giving him that small test earlier. Sounds interesting. And it might just be up my alley. Think your boss can help get my friends out of here and help me get some revenge back home? The blonde asked with a devious grin as his eyes faded back into a sky blue color. It could definitely be possible. I suggest you spend your time in here wisely. If you make more friends, you could find yourself with an army of powerful beings. Maybe I could help you get more familiar with the female population. She offered as she rubbed his shoulders a bit, almost as if she craved his touch for some unknown reason. He nodded in agreement, feeling more of a kinship to some of the inmates here in Arkham than most other people. Likely for the same reason he felt a connection to Anko, they were all outcasts in some way or other. Meanwhile, "This really him?" asked a guard as they wheeled a body bag down the cold halls of Arkham, the tag on the toe reading Ra's al Ghul. The doctor with him merely nodded in confirmation that this was really man himself, who was most likely one of Batman's most dangerous foes. Rumor had it that Ra's had something called Lazarus Pits that could revive him, even after death. Sounded like a load of bull, even by Arkham standards. They deposited the body bag into the open storage locker and slid it inside. Before they could shut the door, the doctor's pager buzzed and he checked it to see what needed to be done next. "Leave him. Dr. Young need me to transfer Bane to the lower levels. Raz isn't going anywhere." The doctor spoke as he departed to oversee the Venom user's transfer. "Yeah, I'm needed to help put Killer Croc in the sewers. I heard he nearly killed Zaz's. If you ask me, I would have let him eat Zaz's and then worry about locking him down there afterwards." The guard replied with a sigh. It was gonna be a really busy night. "No kidding. I hear they prepped a special isolation cell for Poison Ivy to block out her pheromones. Worse, we have an influx of Blackgate inmates coming here and word has it that the Batman is on his way with the Joker. God, they don't pay me enough to deal with all these animals." The doctor complained with a sigh. Unknown to him, the night had only just begun and was far from over. End chapter 1. Chapter 2. Breakout. A new life begins. Somewhere in the Elemental Nations, sitting at a bar was a woman with blonde hair and potentially one of the biggest busts a female could possibly have. By reputation, she is known as a failing gambler, a genius medical ninja, and a woman that could shatter a mountain with the click of her heels. She sighed and drank some more booze to numb the constant ache in her heart from losing Dan and Nawaki, a pain she had never been able to shake off. "Tsunaide-sama. A letter arrived for you," spoke the form of a black-haired woman, her student and apprentice Shizune. "Is it another letter from the debt collectors? Throw it away. It's always the same thing. We will find you or pay off your debts, woman, or lem suck those tits and I'll make your problems go away or some other shit like that." The busty Sanin muttered in annoyance before downing another glass of alcohol. "It's not from the collectors. It's something else." Shizune spoke before handing over the letter to her master. The blonde woman sighed and began to read over the contents, her eyes scanning over the letter. She paused and began to read it over again, as though she were making sure she had read it over correctly and didn't miss anything. Her face burned a dark crimson due to the influence of the alcohol and pure unfettered rage that boiled inside of her. A bottle of sake exploded in her hand as her entire body began to tremble uncontrollably, while a dark and oppressive aura surrounded her. The air itself seemed to weigh down on the patrons, making them feel like they were being crushed or suffocated to death. She got up from her stool and spoke in a voice filled with anger and hate. "Shizune, we are going to Konoha. The old man has a lot of explaining to do." Elsewhere. Arkham Asylum. In the female cell block, Naruto was back in his cell again, his head resting on the lap of Cheshire, who had a sly smile on her face as she stroked his hair. The blonde was enjoying the pampering as he chatted with the other inmates. "Where's Harley and Ivy? I haven't seen them since me and Cheshire got back." He asked the forms of Killer Frost and Catwoman, who had taken a fast liking to the boy due to his innocent and friendly nature. It was a rotten shame he was tossed into Arkham of all places. Ivy got taken to her isolated cell. The guards keep a close eye on her due to her pheromone tricks and poisonous kiss. She was just visiting us earlier. As for Harley, no idea where that girl is. Probably skipped off to find her. Mr. J. Frost answered with a chuckle, making the cat burglar roll her eyes, since Joker and Harley were the very definition of a toxic relationship. That poor girl needed to find someone that would treat her right, or at the very least with decency. Shame. I was hoping to talk more with them. "So Frost, you're some kind of heat vampire, you said?" The whiskered teen asked, having grown curious about Frost's abilities since she mentioned her ice-related powers. Which gave him a small reminder of Haku, the poor soul. "Yup. I gotta absorb heat to keep on ticking. Best way is to absorb it from people. They keep me in a toasty cell so I can absorb the heat inside so I don't croak." The blue-haired woman replied casually. For some reason this kid was giving off a different kind of heat. And for some reason it was attracting her like a moth. And she was eager to get a taste of him. "I see, why don't you use your ice powers to break yourself out?" he asked, since it would be possible for her to cross the waters separating this Arkham from the city. A small part of him had a strong feeling that Warden Sharp Guy wouldn't keep his word or would try and pull a fast one on him. Guys like that almost always try to weasel out of such things. Pant. They put some kind of power dampening collars on metatypes like me. I can't even make a snowflake if I tried. If I try to take it off, I get zapped. Frost replied while pointing at a collar around her neck that made a low humming noise. The blonde mad quietly in response, guessing that the collar was probably being monitored somehow or other. Technology in this part of the world was way more advanced than in the elemental nations. Would the collar deactivate if she got far enough away from Arkham? Did it run on a battery? Did it need some kind of key to be taken off, or does it take the push of a button from a control room? His mind reeled with questions since he wanted out of Arkham, he didn't deserve to be in here. He didn't deserve to be stuffed into a prison for killing some old pervert that was going to murder him by chucking him off a cliff. But then, even if he got out of Arkham, what then? Where would he go? Did he even want to go back to Konoha after what happened? Maybe this could be a chance for a fresh start when he got out. Still, he was thrust into an unfamiliar place. Did he want to take his chances by staying in this Gotham? Or return to the familiarity of the elemental nations? Such complex questions, and he had no solid answers. "You okay, kid?" Selina asked with a raised eyebrow, feeling a bit uncomfortable by his silence and the slight brooding expression on his face. "Just thinking. Wondering if I want to try going back to where I came from or stick around and make the best of things here in Gotham." He replied back, causing his female companions to glance at one another before nodding in understanding, since that was indeed a big decision. "Take it from me. Life isn't set in stone, and nothing's certain. Not everything's gonna be cut and dry, so make the choice you feel most comfortable with or feel has the consequences you can deal with." Cheshire answered, offering some advice to her new friend and temporary master. Although inwardly she was trying to come up with a plan to sneak into the Arkham mansion where the body of her true master, the demon's head, was kept, right by the office of Dr. Young. Still, this boy would be a decent distraction in more ways than one. Their respective musings were broken by the sound of heavy footsteps and the clicking of heels echoing down the cell block. They looked towards the source of the noise. Upon seeing who was coming, Killer Frost sneered and spoke in a disgusted voice. "Oh great. It's the beached whale. Waller." Naruto glanced outside of his cell and saw a large woman being escorted by that warden fellow and a contingent of heavily armed guards. This definitely wasn't good by the looks of it. "Waller? Who's that?" the blonde asked, having a bad feeling that this woman's presence meant trouble. At his question, the ice woman replied to him. "Amanda Waller. She's the director of a shady black ops organization called Cadmus, or most simply the agency. We've met a bunch of times. Usually she shanghais people into working in her suicide squad, which I've been a part of on several occasions. She straps some kind of explosive device on us that'll kill us if we decide to turn tail or disobey her orders. If she's here, she's probably recruiting again." Naruto's eyes narrowed a bit. That sounded rather familiar to him. He had heard of someone called Danzo that put together his own organization of Anbu called Root that turned its operatives into emotionless drones, so it was shut down supposedly. If this Waller person was in any way similar to Danzo, then things could go from bad to worse for him and his new friends. Waller and the warden stopped in front of his cell, the former having her hands clasped behind her back until she raised a finger up and pointed at the him. "He's the one I'm looking for." "The hell do you want me for?" Naruto demanded angrily, then turned his attention to Sharp while pointing an accusatory finger at the man and spoke. "This wasn't part of the deal, Sharp. Something you didn't tell me?" The warden chuckled darkly, showing a display of confidence that he lacked earlier, and replied, "I said that some new overseas friends paid me handsomely to keep you here, but Ms. Waller is offering far more for your services." At the end of his explanation, the word services made an alarm ring in the boy's head. Remembering what Frost had told him about Waller's suicide squad. Waller smirked a bit and then spoke. "Me and the warden have an arrangement. If I need to enlist certain inmates, I come here to Arkham where Batman always dumps his rogues gallery. The warden here was telling me that some brat had the gall to blackmail him, so I got curious and looked into your file a bit. You're from the elemental nations, a continent somewhere off of Japan that almost no one knows about. And when I dig a little deeper, I find out that a veritable nuke has just been sent to the USA. But still, one person's trash, another person's treasure." At the end of her explanation, the boy realized she had discovered his Jinchuriki status somehow or other. Talk about fast work. Too fast for his liking. Someone must have tipped her off. "Don't even think about it, Waller, he's just a kid." Frost spoke, putting herself between the director and her goon squad. Waller raised an eyebrow since the protective display was quite odd for the ICE user, since things like compassion are quite alien to the numerous villains. They'd throw each other under the bus or sell out for a few bucks if it meant saving their skins. "You don't get a say. So glad you're volunteering to joining up again." Waller spoke with a deep frown, then snapped her fingers, prompting one of her men to produce some kind of collar, no doubt the device used to forcibly control people in her squad. Upon seeing the collar, Killer Frost immediately threw herself onto Waller and put her into a chokehold, closing off her windpipe. "Run, kid." she screamed out, prompting the boy to leap off his cot and run down the cell block as fast as his legs could take him. The warden shouted for the guards to stop the boy, while Waller's men tried to rip Killer Frost off of her. Cheshire and Selina engaged the Arkham guards, kicking their legs high into the air, hitting a pair of guards in the chest region, sending them falling into each other like dominoes. As the blonde ran away, he could hear the sounds of blows landing, with both Frost and Selina shouting for him to run away for his life. He had no choice, he had to keep running, he refused to be a slave to anyone. He would not be manipulated or controlled by anyone. As he ran, he saw a window without any iron bars, he leapt forward, covering his face with his arms, as he burst through the glass and fell to the ground outside, the rain-soaked mud softening his landing. He scrambled to his feet and ran off in a random direction. He knew he needed to get out of here, and he needed to get out now. He looked around and saw the harbor, smirking to himself since he could use his chakra to run across the water. He ran towards the water as quickly as possible and leapt forward, his feet landing on the water surface with a small splash as he ran towards the city of Gotham. An alarm ringing loudly behind him, though not necessarily for his escape. The Joker had made his move by starting a riot, inadvertently preventing anyone from pursuing the Jinchuriki. It wasn't long before the blonde made it across the waters and into Gotham City. He could do a run like that thrice over in his sleep thanks to his inhuman stamina and chakra reserves. But right now, he had another problem. He was lost in unfamiliar territory, with no money, no means of income, and right now he was an escaped fugitive. He would need a place to lie low, come up with some kind of a plan. I hope the girls will be okay. The blonde thought aloud as he crossed his arms. He then looked up towards the almost countless buildings towering over him and decided that it'd be a good idea to climb up one and get a better view. Focusing chakra to his feet once more, he scaled up the building with ease before reaching the roof. He looked around and could only see lights and cars littering the streets as far as the eye could see. At last he saw a building devoid of any signs of life. Even in a city like this, it seemed kind of rundown, possibly condemned. Seemed like a good place to lay low for a bit. He hopped across the rooftops and then leapt towards the building itself and channeled chakra to his feet, allowing him to stick to the building's side as he made his way up to an open window. After entering inside, he narrowed his eyes, waiting for them to adjust to the darkness. Once his vision adjusted, he found the room to be rather odd in nature. It was as if it were divided into two halves. One side being almost immaculately clean and the other seemed to be deliberately trashed and torn to pieces. He took a few steps deeper inside until the lights flipped on and a voice spoke in a deep and almost ragged manner, "Who the hell are you, runt?" The blonde turned towards the source of the voice and saw a man sitting behind a desk, holding a pistol in one hand and rolling a coin across his knuckles in the other. The blonde instantly saw that the man's face was scarred on one side, making for a rather intimidating appearance. The blonde raised his hands in surrender and spoke in a calming manner, "Easy now, mister. Not looking for trouble, just looking for a place to hide. I didn't know this was your spot." The man stared at the kid for a few moments and then spoke in a smoother and calm tone, "You're from Arkham." He gestured towards the boy's prison uniform, noting that the boy obviously escaped from the prison he himself had visited so many times before. "Yup. Well, briefly. I was unjustly sent there after I killed a guy in self-defense, then this fattest named Waller wanted to put a damn slave collar on me." The blonde explained, hoping to pacify the two-faced stranger. He doesn't seem to be lying. A story like that is too crazy to be made up, and we've heard crazier. The man spoke out loud before he began to speak again in a raspy voice. "True. We're in agreement then. The kid isn't lying." Naruto raised an eyebrow, wondering why this stranger was having a conversation with himself, but he chose not to comment on it as the man lowered his weapon and got up from his seat. He extended a hand to the boy and spoke in a relaxed tone, "Apologies for the scare. We thought you were somebody else. I am Harvey Dent and you have already met my other half, Two-Face. A pleasure to meet you." The whiskered teen shook Dent's hand with a small smile and replied back, "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Thanks for not shooting me." "Of course. For a moment, I thought you might have been one of Batman's lackeys. But I digress, how on earth did a boy your age escape from Arkham?" Harvey asked as he relaxed back into his seat, casually flipping his coin all the while. "Let's just say I have a trick up my sleeve that lets me run across water. Though I had to leave some friends behind. Killer Frost, Selina Kyle, and Cheshire bought me some time to get away." The blonde explained, feeling a little guilty that he did so. He could have helped them. He could have summoned his clones or something to help, but he didn't. He just ran away, like a coward. How noble of them. Surprising, really. Must have seen something special in you. So what's your story, runt? Two-Face asked out of curiosity, hoping to understand what made this boy tick. Naruto sighed and explained his story, how some old pervert almost threw him off a cliff, how he was royally screwed by the court system of his village, how he was shipped out of his home to Arkham, and ended with how he blackmailed the warden, only for that Waller woman to try and put a slave collar on him. That's interesting news indeed. And Jane Doe has the evidence of the warden's activities. Dent asked with a smirk, if he got a hold on that kind of material, then it could prove pretty valuable. Still being a former district attorney, he felt bad that the boy suffered from the corrupt system of the courts and was unjustly imprisoned. The boy seemed like an honest and surprisingly humble individual. Yup. She's impersonating a guard right now, but there's no way in hell I am going back to that shithole again. I'd sooner kill myself than be sent back there again. The boy grumbled as he crossed his arms, since he didn't want to be found by that beached whale again. A reasonable response. That place is indeed a shithole. The doctors there aren't interested in actually helping, they just want to get famous for curing us. That's why animals like Zaz's keep getting out. The way I see it, kid, you can either go back to the place that screwed you over, or you can try and make it big here. Two-Face responded with a smirk as he flipped his coin, letting it land on his desk before picking it up. Make it big. As a criminal? I never thought about turning to crime before. The blonde muttered, but then again ninjas were hired mercenaries that were paid to perform less than legal missions. Spying, kidnapping, murder, so on and so forth. His skills wouldn't be difficult to translate for criminal purposes, but what he lacked was information. He didn't know the true workings of this city or its hierarchy, if there was one. Good heads. We give the kid a helping hand. Bad heads, he's on his own. Two-Face muttered to himself and flipped his coin. The double-headed coin landed in the palm of his hand, showing the smooth and shiny side. Good heads had won out. You're in luck, boy. I'll help you land on your feet and show you the ropes. For now, let's see about getting you to look the part. Prison duds aren't exactly ideal. Harvey spoke, pointing out the Arkham uniform. The whiskered teen shrugged with a small smile, after all, the clothes made the man. He kinda missed his old orange jumpsuit, though he had to admit maybe it did stand out a bit too much. Maybe here in the big city, he'd go for a more classy look. Meanwhile, in Konoha. What do you mean he is gone? Shouted the form of Tsunade as she slammed her fists down on the Hokage's desk and then ripped it in half before tossing the remains out the window. Hiruzen sat quietly, or perhaps he was frozen in fear of being smashed to pieces like that poor desk. That desk was almost a century old and hand-carved by the finest craftsmen of Konoha for the Shodaime. Hiruzen lamented since that desk was an almost constant companion for all Hokage, and as such, it was almost like losing an old friend. I don't give a rat's ass about a chunk of wood. Tell me what happened. The Sannin almost screeched as she grabbed Hiruzen by his robes and lifted him out of his chair. If he hadn't told the Anbu to leave earlier, he was sure that a bloodbath would have taken place within his office. It was Jiraiya. From my understanding, he attempted to toss Naruto off a cliff to force the boy into tapping into the Kyuubi's power. But Naruto managed to fight back, take him by surprise, and kill him. After that, a murder trial took place and well, there was nothing I could do. The Sandaime explained, which caused Tsunade's face to turn a dark red color with several throbbing tick marks covering her head. Nothing. Nothing you could. The blonde woman shouted angrily, her voice sputtering in outrage. Her assistant Shizune placed a comforting hand on her master's shoulder and spoke in a calming tone, Tsunade-sama, please. Remember your blood pressure. With a growl, the Senju woman set down the Hokage and proceeded to rub her temples. This is all just so fucked. That boy was the last hope of not one, but two clans. And he is the son of a Hokage and one of the most powerful kunoichi in history. And you don't even know where he has been sent. What the fuck happened? She shouted, the obvious lack of information plus the mishandling of Naruto's trial only adding to fuel her anger. If this kept up, then Konoha could be turned into a crater. I don't know. Someone went behind my back and had him shipped overseas. I suspect treachery. Though I have no idea who'd possibly be mad enough to send a Jinchuriki to a foreign country, much less a new continent. For the time being, I am assembling a task force to find Naruto-kun. After Jiraiya's death, I was forced to stop the Chunin exams. No one is saying anything, but there's trouble on the horizon. The other villages can smell blood in the water and the sharks are circling. He spoke with an exhausted sigh. So the only reason you need him back is because of his Jinchuriki status. Tsunade growled out through grit teeth. At the implication, the Sandaime was forced to nod. That is the sad reality of the shinobi world. It shames me, but the Jinchuriki are irreplaceable assets. Sometimes I wish I could just throw away the Hokage mantle and see it all burn. Now I know why Kushina never took the job and called it a sick joke. He spoke in a somber tone, many years of this accursed job taking its toll on him. Whatever, I'll find him. Though it won't be for the sake of this village or in Jiraiya's memory or some shit like that. I'm doing this for Naruto and for the sake of our clans. She replied and crossed her arms beneath her large bust. Wherever that boy was, she hoped he was alright. The next morning. The Iceberg Lounge. Gotta say Harv, I feel kinda out of place here in one of these high society joints. Spoke the form of Naruto as he sat next to his newest acquaintance Two-Face. The blonde wore a crimson linen suit with a black shirt and crimson silk tie, all custom fitted just for him. He also had a pistol hidden on his person via a gun holster hidden under his arm. He wasn't big on the idea of having a gun, largely because he had no prior training in handling one, but he guessed he could always learn how. What really had him on the edge of his seat was how in the open he was here at this club. It would be easy for Waller to find him like this if she was really the director or a top secret agency. Relax boy. It's pretty easy to fit in. Just say one thing while thinking about something else. Harvey replied while sipping at a glass of wine, prompting the boy to smirk a little bit. So, be a two-faced liar, then. The boy asked, making the former DA sputter a bit before he chuckled. Wagging a finger at the boy's sense of humor since he pulled a pretty good pun there. Harvey then took notice that some of the waitresses and hostess kept on giving the boy certain hungry looks as they passed by. Choosing to ignore this, Two-Face decided to give the kid a piece of advice. Careful runt. Lot of guys here in Gotham would kill you for cracking jokes like that. Or they might just slit your throat and watch you bleed to death for the hell of it. The whiskered teen gulped slightly and chuckled nervously before nodding in understanding. He then noticed a man in a top hat approaching who was carrying an umbrella, his short stature and beak-like nose reminding him of a penguin in some ways. Ah. Mr. Dent. Welcome back to the Iceberg Lounge. And who is this young lad? He spoke, greeting them in a polite manner. Mr. Cobblepot, this is Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto, meet our host and owner of the Iceberg Lounge, Mr. Oswald Cobblepot, also known as the Penguin. Harvey spoke to his young charge who nodded with a smile and extended a hand towards the Penguin. The pleasure to meet you, sir. The blonde politely greeted, attempting to put on his best manners since he was now in a high society environment. The Penguin shook the boy's hand in return and responded, likewise my boy. With that said, he turned his attention back to Two-Face and spoke to the former DA. I was just about to host a little poker game in the VIP lounge. Would you gents care to join? It'd be impolite to refuse a generous invitation like that. Deal me in. Naruto, would you care to play? Could be a good learning experience for you. Harvey spoke with a small smirk. The boy instantly realized that Harvey was dropping a hint for him. Naruto immediately guessed that during these poker games, it was possible that criminals could potentially be plotting against each other or discuss mutually beneficial deals of some sort. Not to mention a chance to win some of your competition's money. Sure. I'm in. The boy spoke, deciding it would be best to see how this would pan out. With a nod, Penguin gestured for the two to follow him, guiding the two into a back room where a poker table awaited them. Standing next to it was one of the hostesses of the Iceberg Lounge, a woman with dark skin and short-cut black hair, who tipped her bowler hat to greet them. Sitting at the table was a blonde woman with a dummy. Hey. What's with the kid? The woman, or at least her dummy, spoke. Pointing a questioning finger at the teenager in question. I dunno, he's cute though. The woman spoke with a saucy grin, giving the boy a small wink. The boy blushed a bit and wondered what the deal was with women around here. Back home, if he so much as gave Sakura a simple hello, she'd punch him in the face, her and any other member of Sasuke's fan club, except maybe Ino, who had some form of basic manners at least. Now whenever he walked into a room, women would be all flirty with him. I invited these gents to join in our game. This young gentleman is Mr. Naruto Uzumaki. Do be nice and please, no shooting each other. The Penguin spoke as he gave his umbrella to a hostess waiting outside the door, with Harvey relinquishing the two guns hidden inside his suit, prompting Naruto to do the same, since he guessed that no weapons were allowed inside. Firearms, plus mobsters, plus poker was probably a very bad mix. This little brat. Does he even know how to count? The dummy grumbled, making the boy wonder what the deal was with its owner, using it to mock him after making a flirtatious comment. Either she was messing with him or there was something else to that puppet he wasn't aware of. He remembered that makeup-wearing guy in the cat suit had used puppets, but they were built for combat rather than entertainment, and this one in the mobster outfit kind of gave him a weird feeling for some reason. Once they took their seats, another hostess with fair skin and blonde hair gave them their sets of poker chips. With the dark-skinned one shuffling a deck of cards before tossing each player their respective cards. I don't believe we have been introduced. I am Peyton Riley, and this is the boss Carface. Color me curious. But what's a young boy like you doing rubbing shoulders with the likes of us? The ventriloquist asked out of curiosity, the puppet on her lap staring at Naruto since the moment he entered into the room. I was wondering that myself. It seems rather curious for one so young to join the criminal enterprise. Penguin piped in as he inspected his two cards. The whiskered teen glanced over at the puppet. He was seriously getting some bad vibes coming off of that infernal thing, giving him a strong urge to throw it into a furnace. He cleared his throat and answered, long story. But let's just say some not so pleasant people are after me and I'm not interested in being a certain someone's slave. Cry us a river. The puppet grumbled dismissively, earning a hush from Peyton which caused Scarface's mouth to drop open as the players each took turns adding their chips to the pot. Sounds like there is a much deeper story. Fascinating. I would love to hear more at a later date. Cobblepot spoke, very much wondering what this boy's whole story is and finding it odd that Two-Face had seemingly bonded with the boy so readily. Then again, that man often thought and acted based on that coin of his. I believe I saw you on the evening news. You escaped from Arkham, right? How'd you pull that off in the middle of that riot? Peyton asked as she checked her cards. Her question made the boy raise an eyebrow since he didn't want to reveal too much about his skills. I don't want to reveal the exact nature of how, but simply put, I have a certain trick that lets me run across water. He answered, earning looks of admiration from the other poker players. That would certainly help in escaping Arkham. Wish I had a trick like that. Harvey commented as he rolled his signature coin across his knuckles. At last it came time to reveal their hands, showing that Naruto had won thanks to having a full house. The Penguin adjusted his monocle and sent the dealer, a woman called Raven, a questioning look since her job was to rig the game in his favor, although it wouldn't do if it was obvious that he was cheating, so he decided to let it slide. These poker games were more about gathering information than winning money, and all the other players knew it, except maybe that boy if he hadn't already guessed. Though he did seem to have a good head on his shoulders for the most part. After collecting his winnings for this round, the blonde asked, any of you know what's going on in Arkham right now? That question had been burning in his mind since he escaped. There was no doubt that the authorities would be after him at any moment. Plus he was still worried about the new friends he had left behind. The news says that the Joker orchestrated a massive riot, seizing control of the asylum. He failed after being defeated by the Batman, and the inmates were quickly rounded up, barring a few escapees that got away in the confusion, yourself included. I'm still waiting for more information from my associates. The Penguin explained, making the boy hum slightly in thought. He didn't remember seeing any rioting, so it must have happened shortly after his escape. Any casualties like a certain beached whale called Amanda Waller? The whiskered boy asked, almost desperately, hoping and wishing that someone shanked Waller in that hellhole asylum. The casualty reports haven't been finalized yet, though no Waller person is among the confirmed. It is mostly Arkham guards that were killed. Penguin answered as he adjusted his monocle, making the boy sigh in frustration. Of course someone as rotten as Waller would most likely survive. Seemed that the universe itself either had a sense of humor or just enjoyed being an asshole. What did this Waller person do to you, sweetie? Did she touch you? Riley asked with a raised eyebrow, wondering what the young boy's beef was with this beached whale as he described. Her question earning a sadistic and dark chuckle from the puppet in her lap, prompting her to glare at the dummy for his behavior. Naruto continued to wonder if Peyton was truly in control of the puppet or if it had a sentience of its own. Thank Kami she didn't, otherwise I'd probably feel inclined to kill myself. She wanted to put some kind of slave collar on me so she could make me into a weapon. You see, due to certain circumstances of my birth, I am both valuable and dangerous to a lot of people. He answered, hinting at his Jinchuriki status without giving away too much personal information about himself. Thought a tween like you would be into that kinda thing. The puppet mocked the blonde boy, earning a throbbing tick mark on his forehead, but he noticed that Peyton bared an expression of both horror and embarrassment as she face-palmed herself with her free hand. Okay. That does it. What's the problem with that damn muppet? Naruto snapped since he was now fed up with the odd behavior of Peyton and Scarface. There was definitely something going wrong here. Who are you calling a muppet? I'm one of the biggest crime bosses in Gotham, you little twerp. I was gunning young punks like you down before you were even in Dia. The puppet was cut off mid-sentence when the blonde woman yanked her hand out of his backside and then tossed him aside with a look of disgust on her face. She brushed aside a lock of hair, revealing the scarred side of her face with a fogged-over eye as she spoke. My apologies, I don't know what got into him. I think Mr. Scarface needed a nap. She apologized in a sincere tone. Take it from us, kid. There's definitely something screwy about that puppet. I wouldn't be surprised if that infernal thing had a mind of its own. Two-Face muttered, implying that it was possible that the blonde woman didn't truly have control of the puppet. Naruto blinked several times and shrugged, at least now the damn thing would shut up. He supposed that he had encountered stranger things and he had a Bijuu sealed inside of him, for crying out loud, so who was he to judge? Right. Well, now that the muppet is finally quiet, how about we continue the game? The blonde boy politely suggested, earning some nods from the other players. As the round progressed, the whiskered teen kept on raising higher and higher. Not feeling confident in their hands, the others all folded only to discover the boy had a bad hand himself. They all silently kicked themselves for falling for that trick, seemed the boy was a better player than anticipated, or maybe he was just having a case of beginner's luck. Still, everyone knows that the game of poker is never finished in a single round. As the minutes kept on ticking by, the chips kept on piling up for young Naruto. And the others were astonished at his unbelievable luck, though Penguin wondered if the boy was truly lucky or if the dealer decided to rig the game for the boy instead to get in his good graces. For some reason every one of his female employees' guards seemed unusually smitten with the boy, just what was his secret? He had just won about $5 million by now after this game. Seems like Lady Luck favors you, kid. Those winnings should be more than enough to help you get your start. Though it won't last forever, and I don't think your luck is infinite. Harvey spoke as he flipped his coin, which landed on its side, rolling towards the boy before coming to a stop in front of him, landing on the good heads. You're right, Harv. I'm going to need to get set up, and soon. But I don't have a power base, and it would take way too much time to build a criminal empire from the ground up, meaning I'd probably have to somehow take control of another gang. The whiskered teen noted with a grimace. Rupert Thorne's one of the biggest fish in Gotham. He's got an extensive smuggling operation involving drugs, weapons, and so on. If you take him out, you might be able to take his gang. Two-Face suggested, still bearing a deep grudge for the mob boss responsible for what happened to him and his face. It would take a major thorn out of all our sides, pun intended. The ventriloquist spoke with a small smile, her joke earning a few chuckles from the other crime bosses. The whiskered teen smirked since now he had a target to aim for, but he doubted he had the needed skill to take on a crime lord alone. But then he knew some people that might be able to help him out. And he just won a very useful supply of cash that he could use. And he knew just how to put it to use. Sounds interesting. I actually have an idea if you don't mind helping out a little. The blonde suggested with a sly smile, making his new cohorts curious about his proposal. A few days later. Outside of Arkham. Does anyone know what we're doing out here? Spoke the form of Harley Quinn as she sat on her duffel bag. With her were the forms of Poison Ivy, Killer Frost, and Selina Kyle. Didn't you get the memo, Quinn? We've been bailed out of Arkham. Selina spoke in a matter-of-fact tone. It was most probably someone that wanted their service to pull some jobs or a heist that required their particular skills. Wouldn't be the first time, wouldn't be the last. Oh yeah. Right. Harley muttered distractedly, a part of her being worried since the Joker audit on that Titan stuff and was currently in critical condition. She wasn't sure what was going on with him, but the doctors said it wasn't good. At least we're out and about and not on Waller's leash. Damn, it felt good to kick the stuffing out of that fattest bitch. The ice user shouted gleefully, pumping her fist in the air. After attacking Waller, choking her out and clocking her on the head, the Joker's riot prompted her goons to get her out somehow or other. Probably had a chopper or a boat kept stashed for a quick getaway. Still, Waller hadn't shown up or reared her fat head since then. At least now she wasn't in danger of being recruited into the Suicide Squad again. There was more good news. Naruto somehow managed to escape since she overheard the head of security, Cash, say that the boy was still unaccounted for. Their ears perked up as a car engine approached, a black limousine rolling up and stopping in front of them. A window rolled down revealing Naruto seated next to Peyton Riley, the new ventriloquist who was currently without her other half for some reason. "Can I offer you ladies a lift?" Naruto asked with a charming smile, his very presence making their faces light up with glee at seeing him again. He opened the door, granting them entry inside. They all climbed inside, though Naruto frowned for a moment as he asked what happened to Cheshire. Dawn. She escaped sometime during the riot. No idea where she is now, probably went back to her League of Assassins. Ivy answered with a sultry smile as she sat next to the boy. He sighed in relief, glad that a fellow ninja managed to get away. Good to know. Any idea what happened to Bane or Killer Croc? He asked since he tried to get them out along with his sire, it only seemed right since they helped him escape from a potentially gruesome death. But was told that they were unavailable and wasn't given a reason as to why. Guess Arkham was still in shambles, considering what a titanic mess the Joker left behind. I overheard that Bane got sent into the harbor by Batman's car. And Croc is somewhere down in the sewers. Good luck finding those two. At this moment, I don't think they really want to be found. Selina answered with a yawn, glancing over at the form of Peyton. Seemed like the boy once trapped in Arkham was moving up since he was now in a limo. Damn. They helped me out, so I was hoping to repay the favor. Guess that'll have to wait. Naruto muttered, at least he had gotten a hold of the others for now. Alright, I'm just gonna ask the question that's on everyone's minds. Would you bail us out of jail, and why are you with a ventriloquist? Harley asked impatiently, stamping her foot on the floor almost like a child. Well, I met some new friends. decided to take up a life of crime since I currently have few options on the table and I'm gonna need your help in taking down a guy called Thorn. See, Ms. Riley here and Two-Face has been showing me the ropes, teaching me all I need to know. And some of the greatest weapons in Gotham is money, influence and super criminals. The last one, Thorn doesn't have any of those, at least to my knowledge. Oh, this sounds like it's gonna be fun, so where's your partner, Sugar? Harley asked a ventriloquist, spitting out the nickname with some venom since it left a bad taste in her mouth since it was what that damned Muppet called his newest partner. He's on a timeout. Apparently he didn't take a liking to this cutie pie like I did. The mobster woman replied since Carface was currently tucked away in a suitcase, out of sight and out of mind since he attempted to shoot the boy at one point. And she couldn't stand for that for some reason. One more thing ladies, I have noticed that most if not all criminals here in Gotham have some kind of epithet. Before I had you all released, I made sure to erase my own record so I could disappear. Only refer to me by name in a private. When working a job for me, call me Kingpin. He spoke with a broad smile since he came up with his own nickname. They all nodded in understanding, believing it to be a nickname that'd catch on. Then before he knew it, he felt a cold sensation on one cheek and a burning sensation on the other. Both Frost and Ivy were kissing his cheeks. That's for getting us out, boss. Ivy spoke in a sultry tone. Make way, ladies. I gotta have a turn. Harley yelped as she began wildly planted kisses of her own on the boy. Soon the limo was filled with the sounds of smooching. Elsewhere. Gotham Clock Tower. Holy hell. Muttered the form of Barbara Gordon as she sat in front of one of her many computers. After the Arkham riot had been resolved, she began monitoring all of Gotham for any signs of escapees. Cheshire had already vanished with the body of Ra's al Ghul and was probably delivering it to the League of Assassins so that he could be revived once more. Killer Croc and Bane were now like ghosts. The former could be anywhere in the maze of sewers and Bane could wash up anywhere in Gotham, so it was currently impossible to find them. Finally she came to Naruto Uzumaki and discovered that his file had recently been deleted almost like he never existed. Fortunately she had a copy of her own on record. Q. The poor kid had a rough time judging by what happened to him with his trial, but that wasn't the most shocking part. She looked into his medical records that were taken just hours before his incarceration. If her research was correct, then his body was constantly putting out powerful pheromones that had a tremendously powerful effect on others, most especially the opposite sex. Those affected would feel compelled to support and protect him and desire him. And that wasn't all. From his blood and tissue samples, she found that his body was capable of high-speed regenerative capabilities. If her calculations were right, his abilities would only get stronger and stronger over time. She didn't know why, but it seemed like his body had some kind of energy inside of it that was both powerful and unstable. If it were to go out of control, then well, Gotham could end up at the bottom of the sea. Perhaps most disturbing of all, his file had been flagged by Amanda Waller's agency and it was likely they had a copy of their own. If Waller was looking for him, it could only mean trouble. She would need to inform Batman about this and fast before things got out of control. Then Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Circles Within Circles. Part 1. It was yet another late night in Gotham City and within a certain restaurant was one of the biggest crime bosses in the city, Rupert Thorne. Some laughter could be heard as he and some of his most trusted bodyguards were enjoying their evening meal. However, even as Thorne took a bite of lasagna, the wheels were still turning in his mind. Like his many rivals, Carmine Falcone, Salvador Maroni, and perhaps Roman Black Mask Sionis, he was considered an old-school mobster. His criminal empire involved numerous rackets, money laundering, drugs, and so on and so forth. The various themed villains that Batman often combated were volatile, unpredictable, and impossible to control. However, a new individual was on the scene, someone no one had even heard of until recently, someone calling himself the Kingpin. And apparently this Kingpin was planning on taking over his criminal empire. If he truly did have super criminals in his arsenal, then that would complicate matters. Especially since the only deterrent for those kinds of criminals was the Batman himself. Thorne's musing was interrupted when the restaurant's front door opened, causing a bell to chime. A blond man entered inside with a broad smile and spoke, "Evening, gentlemen. My apologies for interrupting your dinner. But I needed a quick word with you, Mr. Thorne." The mob boss raised an eyebrow while his men glared at the newcomer suspiciously. Their hands slowly reaching into their coats in case they needed to draw their weapons. "Something I can help you with, mister?" Thorne asked, pausing at the end since he didn't know the stranger's name. "Not Onamicus. Though you may refer to me as the Kingpin." The blond man spoke and gave a small bow, making Thorne narrow his eyes a bit before smirking. "So you're the new guy. You have some balls coming in here, especially with the rumors going around that you're looking to take over my empire." Thorne spoke with a small chuckle as he sipped his wine. "True. Though I figured a courtesy call was in order. I just wanted to inform you that my takeover of your empire is strictly business. Nothing personal. Establishing my own network and empire would take months, maybe even years, and I don't have the luxury of time for that. So I figured I'd just take it from one of the big dogs. You. Now then, I have an offer for you, Mr. Thorne. Leave Gotham quietly with as much money as you can carry, and you will be spared. Refuse, and you shall die within approximately 12 hours' time. Minato spoke with a small shrug, prompting Thorne's men to pull their guns out and point them at the blonde man, the safeties clicking a few times to make sure their weapons were ready to fire. You think you can come and make threats, punk? It's gangsters like me that made Gotham what it is. You really think you can come to my city and take away what I have built? Thorne demanded angrily as he slammed his fist on the table. The blonde simply snapped his fingers, and then the sound of a whip cracking was heard, and Thorne's bodyguards had their pistols ripped out of their hands. When Thorne looked behind the Kingpin, he saw the forms of both Catwoman and Killer Frost standing behind him with devilish grins on their faces. Like I said, Mr. Thorne. This is a courtesy call. I gave you fair warning, so don't say I didn't give you a way out. Enjoy your dinner, gentlemen. The blonde man spoke with a small bow and then turned on his heel, departing from the restaurant with both the burglar and Ice Woman following close behind. Thorne narrowed his eyes at the Kingpin's retreating form until the man disappeared from view. The guy certainly had some stones on him, that's for sure. He'd give the Kingpin that much credit. And it seemed he would need to make extra preparations if this guy tried something in the next 12 hours. Meanwhile, outside the restaurant, a black limousine was waiting for the Kingpin and his bodyguards, with Harley Quinn yawning a bit as she leaned against the car. She almost immediately perked up upon seeing her boss and opened the door for him, giving him a salute as if she were greeting the president. He chuckled at her antics as he stepped inside, followed by Selina and Frost, and then by Harley herself, who shut the door with a small thunk. Once the door slammed shut, the form of Minato vanished in a puff of smoke and was replaced by Naruto, who gave a sigh of relief. Damn. Maintaining a henge under pressure is way harder than I thought. Naruto mumbled as he ran a hand through his hair. Nice trick. A flawless disguise like that certainly comes in handy. But then, I guess people would have difficulty taking the Kingpin seriously if they knew he was a kid. Selina pointed out with a saucy grin, a part of her wishing she had a trick like that. It would certainly make it easier to do some recon on potential heists if she could pull it off. Much obliged. There will likely come a time when my true identity is revealed. Till that time, it is best I limit how many people know my true form. By the way, the blonde smiled as he turned towards another occupant sitting inside the limo and continued to speak big, thanks to you, Ivy. For charming the chef and poisoning Thorne's dinner. Poison Ivy smiled deviously and replied, my pleasure. Where to now? The Iceberg Lounge. She asked, her hand reaching towards the phone connected to the limo's driver to relay the boy's instructions. Yeah. I have some business to discuss with the others. The whiskered teen spoke, making the plant expert nod as she picked up the phone and ordered the driver to head towards the Iceberg Lounge. Naruto sighed as he crossed his arms and thought about the looming presence of Waller. So long as she remained on the playing field, he wouldn't truly be safe. He'd need to level the playing field. And soon. He would soon have a power base for his own crime syndicate. Courtesy of the soon-to-be-late Rupert Thorne, but he also knew that it was likely someone else would seek to take what he had. The criminal enterprise was an extremely cutthroat and competitive business. He would need to make connections and alliances. For the time being, he was on largely friendly terms with 3 of the biggest mob bosses in Gotham, well 2.5 if you cut out a certain Muppet. But how long would they stay friendly, he wondered. His musing was cut short when they had arrived at the Penguins Club with surprising speed. He would need to thank the man himself for setting him up with such an effective driver. Naruto formed a single hand sign and reformed the henge of Minato to maintain his public disguise since he didn't want to risk pushing his luck in his true form anymore. Shall we, ladies? The Kingpin spoke, putting on his most charming smile as both Ivy and Selina each took an arm. Killer Frost and Harley pouted a bit as they exited the car, with the former putting her arms beneath her bust and the latter lazily resting her bat on her shoulder as they entered inside the lounge. When they made it through the doors, they were almost immediately greeted by a hostess who was sporting a large blush on her cheeks. Welcome to the Iceberg Lounge, may I help you, handsome? The hostess spoke as she tipped her bowler hat a bit. Minato smirked a bit since this had become fairly common for him now and replied yes. I'm the Kingpin, the Penguin is expecting me. At that, the hostess smiled brightly and answered yes sir. Right this way. With that said, they were guided to one of the back rooms in the VIP section of the club where a pair of the Penguin's henchwomen could be seen standing guard. Candy. Raven. Lovely to see you both. The Kingpin greeted, causing the 2 women to giggle and blush a little as they opened the door for him and his colleagues. When they entered inside, they were greeted by the waiting forms of Two-Face, the Penguin and the ventriloquist. As soon as the doors closed behind him, the blonde relaxed and allowed his hinge to vanish in a puff of smoke, since these people were already privy to his true form. So how'd it go with Thorn? The fat man dead yet? Two-Face asked impatiently as he anxiously flipped his coin since the man was responsible for his scarring. Not yet. But he may as well be. In about 12 hours or so, he'll be choking to death on his own blood. Him and some of his top goons. The Jinchuriki answered, earning a sadistic chuckle from the former DA. Hope you're proud of yourself, kid. Now it's only a matter of time before someone whacks you off. Scarface grumbled, making his displeasure for the blonde clear as day. Indeed. By a woman preferably. Naruto responded and sent a flirtatious wink towards Peyton, making her smirk a little at the innuendo. Am I a joke to ya? Scarface shouted, flailing his small arms about in outrage. Fortunately, any weapons he had were already confiscated earlier, which didn't make him much of a threat now. Actually, yeah. You kind of are. Where's a bonfire when you need it? The blonde joked a little, earning some laughter from the others, including Peyton herself. Before the puppet had a chance to bicker further, the blonde woman slipped her hand out of Scarface's back, letting him lifelessly slump forward. Now that the Muppet is quiet, we can get down to some real business. Scarface did make one solid point though, once I take over Thorn's gang, it's only a matter of time before someone comes to kill me to take it from me. Might be a rival gang, might be one of you. Naruto pointed out as he crossed his arms a bit. What? You saying you don't trust us? Harvey asked in a mock-hurt tone as he flipped his coin and then began rolling it across his knuckles in a casual manner. Naruto shrugged his shoulders and replied, trust is earned, not given. And in the criminal element. Trust is especially limited. You all seem like an okay sort to me, you haven't sold me out yet. Though there's not much stopping you from doing so if it is for your own benefit or survival. Fast learner this one. The penguin stated with a hint of pride, tipping his hat towards the boy for adapting so quickly to the criminal enterprise. Appreciate the compliment. However, I'm faced with another problem. So long as Waller is on my tail, I'll be looking over my shoulder far more than I need to. And on top of that I'm still a wanted fugitive. The blonde lamented with a sigh as he ran a hand through his hair. Indeed, though we won't be of much help in that regard. Penguin sighed since he wasn't about to mess around with government spooks. Especially the well-armed, well-funded, and ruthless variety. Don't worry about me. I already have a plan in mind. Once I'm finished with Waller, I hope we can discuss a more permanent alliance. The blonde spoke with a smirk, earning some nods from his cohorts. There's one more thing, kid. What about Jane Doe? You said she had damning evidence against Warden Sharp. Word on the grapevine is that he's planning to run for mayor, claiming he was instrumental in stopping the Joker's riot. Harvey asked with a raised eyebrow, causing both Penguin and the ventriloquist to look expectantly at the boy for an explanation. Ah. Right. I didn't get around to telling you. I tried to find Jane Doe by locating her persona as an Arkham guard, but she had been declared amongst the missing after the riot. Best guess. Jane Doe likely flew the coop and escaped to find a new identity to settle into. Either way, she's in the wind now. Still, even if we don't have that evidence, knowing its existence and contents provide a certain advantage. If we start spreading rumors about Sharp's activities, people are gonna start asking him questions. Questions he won't have answers to. The blonde explained with a grin. Questions that will gain the curiosity of the Batman. Good thinking. Peyton complimented with a grin, earning some nods from her fellow mobsters. The mentioning of their longtime enemy gaining a look of curiosity from the boy. What's the deal with this Batman? I've heard talk and whispers about him for a while now. Naruto asked out of curiosity, earning some puzzled looks from his associates. In the background Quinn sent a small glare at Catwoman, since it was pretty well known the burglar had Batman had an on-again off-again relationship. One would think she would have given him the rundown. However, it was club owner who spoke first. I suppose we forgot you haven't been in Gotham for long. Batman is a vigilante that has spent many years disrupting our business and trying to put and keep us in prison. He may not have superpowers, but he is still ranked as a top-tier hero. You could say he's a fight smarter, not harder type of person. The rest I imagine you can discover for yourself. The blonde pursed his lips for a moment, then spoke. To fight crime effectively, he would need a strong information network. He can't be everywhere at once, so it's likely he keeps a small circle of individuals he can wholeheartedly trust nearby. He must also have connections to the police to increase the effectiveness of his operations. That about sum it up. Once the boy had finished speaking, the stunned silence showed that he had hit the nail on the head. From the many whispers and snippets of information that the blonde had heard about this Batman, it sounded like the man had some form of training as a ninja. From martial arts to scare tactics and so forth. Fortunately for him, he knew how ninjas operate. But that would be something for later. For now, he had a plan of action to dealing with Waller and possibly clearing his fugitive status. And he wasn't going to waste time by twiddling his thumbs. Later. GCPD, Commissioner Gordon's office. Gordon sighed at his desk as he took a long drag from his pipe which had been found and later returned to him after the riot in Arkham. According to some reports from the doctors, after the Joker had audit on that Titan formula, his own body was slowly turning against him and killing him from the inside out. To be perfectly honest, Gordon was actually looking forward to and perhaps dreading the moment the clown would expire. Most of the inmates had been found and rounded up thanks to the Batman's efforts. Although amongst the escapees was Bane, Killer Croc, Cheshire, and that Naruto boy that had vanished as well. For the life of him, Gordon couldn't understand why a child would be sent to Arkham of all places. His thoughts were interrupted when he felt a cool draft coming from his window. He glanced over and found it to be open. Which could only mean one thing. Something I can help you with? Gordon asked as he leaned back in his seat. You're getting better. The Batman spoke as he emerged from the shadows, his tone indicating a hint of admiration for Gordon detecting his presence. You don't get to live in this job for long without picking up a few things. Anything on the Arkham escapees? Gordon asked since he guessed that was why his ally was here. Yes. I have recently received information about one of the escapees from a reliable source. Along with something else. To start, Naruto Uzumaki's record is fairly spotty. From what little that was dug up, his trial in the courts appeared to have been rigged after he supposedly murdered a man despite his claims that it was self-defense. His file has also been flagged by Waller's agency, likely due to his abilities. Harem in production, regeneration, and perhaps most dangerously a unique and unstable energy that could equate to a tactical nuke. The Batman explained in order to keep Gordon in the loop. It was usually a good idea to inform the police of what they were dealing with so they could better prepare themselves for any potential fallout. Waller, if she's taken an interest in the kid, that can only spell trouble. It might also explain why he escaped from Arkham if she was actually there. There's something else. A few hours ago, a man calling himself the Kingpin appeared and made threats against Rupert Thorne. He also had the backing of Killer Frost and Catwoman. The Batman spoke and pulled out a device, showing a picture of a blonde man with both of the supervillains guarding him from Thorne's men. I thought they were in Arkham. Who is this guy? Gordon asked as he adjusted his glasses. He certainly hadn't heard of someone called the Kingpin before. And here in Gotham, a name can mean everything. It can help establish a reputation, respect, and other things. I'm not sure. I've had every file and record combed for any evidence, but he doesn't exist anywhere. He's a new talent. And he's already making big moves. He arranged for the release of Catwoman, Killer Frost, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn a short while ago. They're likely working off the debt of their release for him. I have a strong feeling that this Kingpin isn't a common mobster. The Dark Knight spoke grimly. He had seen many criminals from all walks of life, from the petty to the career type, the desperate and the insane. But this seemed to be something else. Something new. Their conversation was interrupted when the door was shoved open by Detective Bullock, who said, "Someone to see you, Commissioner." The detective turned his head a bit and took notice the Batman was present but didn't seem to care he had interrupted them. This had better be important, Bullock. We were in the middle of something. Gordon warned the detective as he took a drag from his pipe. Bullock smirked a bit and stepped to the side, allowing a small figure to step through the doorway, revealing one Naruto Uzumaki. The Arkham escapee himself. I think you guys were looking for me. The boy spoke with a small smile, now wearing his prison jumpsuit that was now caked in dirt and mud. How'd you find him, Bullock? Gordon asked as he got up from his chair while adjusting his glasses. I didn't. The kid came up to the front door and knocked. The detective answered in a blunt tone, though he too seemed kind of surprised by this development. It wasn't often when a fugitive literally walked into a police station willingly. Before their conversation could continue, they were interrupted by a distinctive grumbling sound that was coming from the boy, who blushed a bit in embarrassment. Sorry about that. You guys got any food around here? Naruto asked with a sheepish grin. Gordon chuckled a bit and replied, I'm sure we can find something for you. You've been through a lot, haven't you? Gordon replied with a smile. A few minutes later, the blonde was sitting in front of Gordon's desk, munching on some donuts with a cup full of milk. He seemed to take a large liking to the jelly-filled ones. Damn. These are friggin' good. The boy spoke as chomped down on another donut. How did you escape from Arkham? Batman asked as he stood in a dark corner of the room, his mask mixed with the shadows, making it hard to read his expression. Though if one had to guess, it was likely he was evaluating the boy. I'm a ninja, I ran across the water. The whiskered teen answered as he happily bit into another donut. The policeman seemed skeptical at his words, but then given the variety of crooks and outrageous skills, tricks and powers they had, they guessed running across water wasn't that big a stretch. Does the name Amanda Waller mean anything to you? The Batman asked again. This time though, the blonde tensed up in the middle of his chewing before he swallowed and looked in the Dark Knight's direction. A walking tub of lubber with no scruples about enslavement and a mighty high opinion of herself. Yeah. It does. She's the reason I had to escape from Arkham. The blonde answered in a disgruntled tone. Inwardly he thought about potentially mentioning Sharp, but decided that he should teach the man what it meant to double-cross the newly dubbed Kingpin. I take it that it was about your abilities? Gordon asked as he rubbed his temples before placing a fresh batch of tobacco in his pipe and then lit it. Yeah. Due to certain circumstances surrounding my birth, well, let's just say a lot of people are out to get me. They either want me dead or on the end of a leash. Naruto answered bitterly as he chomped on another donut and seemingly swallowed it whole with ease. You have a fairly broad range. Your pheromone production makes people around you, especially females, more open to suggestion. And your regenerative capabilities would make you impossible to kill by conventional means. The Batman pointed out and then took notice when the boy had a confused look on his face. Say what now? Something about pheromones and regeneration. Naruto asked out loud in complete surprise. This was the first time he had ever heard of having abilities like that. Since when did he have those abilities? Unless had he activated some kind of bloodline or something when that Uriah bastard tried to kill him. That would help explain some of the things going on around him, most especially when it came to women. You didn't know. The Batman stated matter-of-factly. It seemed the boy wasn't fully aware of his capabilities. Though he must have been aware of at least some of them since he had run from Waller. Either these abilities were new mutations or the boy simply hadn't taken notice of them until now. No. I didn't. This is all news to me. Anyways, I didn't want to live as a fugitive. So I came here to the police. I heard you were a good man, Commissioner Gordon. And I heard that Batman is one of the best heroes on Earth. You gotta protect me from Waller. The boy pleaded at the end, obviously desperate to be free from the threat of Cadmus and the agency. Don't you worry, son. We're not gonna let Waller have her way with you. Gordon spoke, giving the boy his solemn promise. To protect and serve was part of the job after all. Please don't say it like that. Now it sounds like Waller is some kind of pedophile. Naruto grumbled, his face turning a shade of green, while Bullock had to stifle a laugh. Gordon seemed a bit flustered by his blunder as he sheepishly rubbed the back of his neck. Gordon. Keep Naruto safe. I'll deal with Waller. The Dark Knight stated. Before anyone could get another word in, he had already vanished out of existence, as though he had never even been there to begin with. Gordon sighed a bit and shook his head, turning towards the blonde boy. I guess you'll be needing a place to stay for a while. You can stay at my place till we find a more permanent residence for you. The commissioner offered, earning a nod of thanks from the boy. Naruto could tell that Gordon was a good man and an honest cop that hasn't been corrupted by the system. He wouldn't bend the knee to Waller. That was good to know. So far, his plan was going smoothly, but this was only part one. What followed next would be absolutely crucial. Later. Gordon's apartment. Barbara sighed tiredly as she rubbed her eyes a bit. She had been staring at her computer screen for hours now, keeping an eye out for any signs of Cadmus or the missing inmates from Arkham. And now she had a new person of interest dropped on her plate as she stared at the paused frame showing a blonde man visiting Rupert Thorne in one of his favorite restaurants. She had gone through every criminal database in the entire world with a fine-tooth comb and found absolutely nothing on him. No matches on facial or retinal scans. It was as if the man had just dropped out of the sky. Normally, whenever a random hoodlum made threats against a crime boss, it often wasn't taken seriously. The smart ones never follow through on their threats. But then random hoodlums don't have the backing of super criminals. She glanced into her mirror and noted that her eyes were becoming bloodshot. She decided now would be a good time to stop for the night and continue later. If there was anything to work with, she would have found it by now. She'd have to trust Batman to handle the rest. She sighed and shut down her computer before wheeling herself near her bed. She grabbed her legs one at a time and lowered them to the floor. Taking a deep breath, she slowly lifted herself out of her wheelchair and pushed herself up until she was standing on her own two legs. The doctor said she may never walk again after getting shot through the spine by the Joker. But she wasn't ready to give up just yet. She wasn't going to give up her legs until it was absolutely certain she was beyond any hope of recovery. It used to be her legs would give out almost immediately, but as time went on, she started to stand for a few seconds. Now she could stretch it to minutes. Always keeping close by to her bed for support or something soft to land on in case her legs couldn't stand the pressure anymore. For this session, she didn't feel any discomfort in her legs from standing. Her face twitched a bit as she slowly lifted up one leg and took a tentative step forward, then she repeated the process with her other foot. After every few seconds she would cautiously step forward, pushing herself onwards. She beamed at her own success, knowing that she was definitely on the way to a full recovery. She could only imagine the surprise and elation on her father's face when she revealed she could walk again. But she wanted to wait until she had full mobility again before revealing the big news. Anything could happen and she didn't want to give him hope only for it to come crashing down. A large part of her also wished to fully recover so she could once again don her Batgirl persona once again. Those had been some of the best years of her life, jumping across rooftops, pulverizing crooks, helping both Batman and her father keep the city safe. She would give almost anything to return to those days. And it seems that her wishes were well within reach if she kept up this pace. She spent a few more minutes carefully pacing about her room and then felt her legs starting to lose her strength. Not wanting to take an unnecessary risk, Barbara lowered herself back into her wheelchair once again. A look of satisfaction on her face since she felt this was a highly productive session. Her ears perked up when she heard the locks clicking to the apartment door, followed by a shout of "Barb. I'm home. And I brought a guest." She smiled warmly since she was glad that her father had returned safely once again. Then she became puzzled, wondering who her father had brought with him. Humming. She called out and began to push the wheels on her chair forward to enter the living room. She saw her father hanging his signature trench coat and with him was a familiar young boy whose picture she had researched and had seen all across the evening news. Naruto Uzumaki himself. "Naruto, this is my daughter Barbara. Sorry I didn't call Barb, plans kind of changed when this little guy waltzed right into the GCPD, then we had to stop by a thrift store. He'll be staying with us for a bit." Her father explained as he gestured to the boy who was now wearing a plain white t-shirt and some jeans for the moment. "Nice to meet you Barbara." The whiskered teen politely greeted as he extended his hand towards her. She stared blankly at him for a few moments, feeling her cheeks start to burn a bit. Looking at him up close in person, he was kind of cute. She just wanted to reach out and start petting those whisker-like markings. "No. Bad Barbara. Do not think those kind of thoughts. It's just the pheromones talking. Just keep focus." She spoke in her mind, trying to keep from getting distracted. "What's wrong? Did a cat catch your tongue or something? Or is this the first time you've had a hardcore crook in your house?" The blonde teen asked with a smile, only for it to quickly fade away when Barbara smacked his hand away and retreated back into her room, slamming the door behind her. Naruto was stunned for a few seconds as he dumbly blinked before finally turning to Jim and asked, "Did I say something wrong?" Jim sighed a bit as he removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose before answering, "Poor choice of words, son. A few years ago, a maniac called the Joker broke into our apartment and shot my daughter. He's the reason she's in that wheelchair. Joker then kidnapped me, tried to drive me insane. Did some pretty horrible things." Barb won't say anything, but I think she still has nightmares about it on occasion, but she still keeps up a strong front so I can focus on my job. That girl is tough as they come. At the end of his explanation, Naruto stared at the door leading to Barbara's room and spoke, "I see. I'll give her a few minutes to cool off and then apologize to her. I didn't know about that. Yeah. I guess I should have warned you about that. I guess I'll need to apologize a little too. But don't worry, Barbara is a pretty understanding girl, she'll always forgive an honest mistake." Jim spoke and gently patted the boy's shoulder in encouragement before taking a seat on the couch. "You can borrow my bed while you're here." Gordon spoke as he gestured towards another door that was half open. "You sure? I can always take the couch." Naruto asked, only for the commissioner to wave him off with a dismissive chuckle. "Nah. Don't worry about it. This couch is like an old friend to me. I sometimes sit in it and fall right to sleep after a long night of work." Jim explained with a small smile, causing the blonde to chuckle a bit since he himself had a similar relationship with his own couch after a long pranking spree. Plus in some ways his couch was more comfortable than his old bed. "That man told me about your file. That you killed a man, claiming self-defense." Jim spoke in order to get to know the boy a bit better. He had seen many people kill someone and claim it as self-defense, it was always a matter of determining the liars from the genuine. "That's right, the asshole was going to throw me off a cliff. Didn't leave me much choice." Naruto answered bluntly as he settled into the opposite side of the couch, resting his head in an open palm. "How'd it make you feel when you killed him?" Jim asked as he pulled a cleaning cloth from his vest pocket and began to clean his glasses as he listened for the boy's response. "I dunno exactly. I felt a lot of things. I was angry that he tried to kill me, I was shocked that I had actually killed someone. I was happy to be alive. But I dunno, a part of me wishes that what happened could have gone differently. Maybe then I wouldn't have gone through a kangaroo court and got torn away from my home and the few friends I had. But another part of me isn't sorry. I did what I had to do in a bad situation with no time to think. And that guy, I trusted him enough to try and learn something from him even if I didn't have that many options, and he tried to throw me away like I was trash. Like I was disposable to him, and it still makes me feel so angry thinking about it." The blonde ranted, obviously showing he had a lot to get off his chest. "Boy, I have seen all kinds of killers. A lot of them being sociopaths. But you? I can tell you've been to hell and back. You know what you did and you're still trying to accept what happened. Those kinds of feelings and memories. It takes time to sort them out. Jim spoke somberly as he replaced his glasses. Does the pain ever really go away? Naruto asked with a frown. He sensed someone staring into his back and turned to find Barber had partially opened her door and had listened in on everything they had said. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. I think it largely depends on the person and how they cope. Either way, they find some way to deal with it and keep moving forward. If I've learned anything. Life's not about how hard of a hit you can give. It's about how many you can take and still keep moving forward. Also, I wanted to apologize for how I acted. I shouldn't have snapped, but there's just some things a person can't shake off. She spoke as she wheeled herself forward, giving an apologetic look. Thanks. I actually wanted to say that I was sorry too. I didn't mean to upset you. Had I known, I wouldn't have opened my big mouth and stopped myself from sounding like a douchebag. Guess I spent too much time amongst criminals. He apologized sincerely and then inwardly laughed at his own inside joke that he hadn't intended. I should apologize too. I should have warned our guest. I think I know just the thing to make this better pizza. Pizza makes everything better. Jim spoke, flashing a bright smile as he got up from the couch and picked up the phone. With both his daughter and guest happily agreeing that pizza sounded delicious. Before Jim could punch in the phone number for the nearest pizza joint, there was a loud knocking on his door. You aren't expecting anybody else, are you? Naruto asked warily as he stared at the door before glancing over to Jim, who slowly set the phone down. He still had his gun holster on him and pulled his pistol out. As he slowly approached the door and looked through the peephole and saw both Waller and an entire squad of her armed goons ready to burst through the door. Jim bit his lip as he glanced over, knowing he couldn't risk endangering his daughter, but he also couldn't hand over the boy. Jim sighed deeply and mouthed "Run" to the whiskered teen, who immediately got the message as he nodded, and Barbara whispered to him about a fire escape outside her father's bedroom, prompting the boy to dash out as quickly and quietly as possible. Bolstering his pistol, Jim reluctantly opened the door and spoke. What do you want, Waller? At his question, the woman herself glared at the commissioner and gruffly answered, we're here for the kid. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Jim clenched his fist tightly into a white-knuckle grip and spoke, he's not here. Now go away. I was about to order pizza. At his words, Waller scoffed and snapped her fingers, prompting her men to burst into Gordon's apartment and started to search for their target. This is wrong, Waller. The kid told us everything. Don't think for a second you're gonna get off easy for this one. So help me God, I'll see you put behind bars for the remainder of your miserable life. The commissioner promised, only for one of the agents to slam the butt of his rifle into Gordon's stomach. Take them. We'll make them tell us where the slippery brat snuck off to. Amanda spoke as her men slapped the cuffs on the Gordons, with Jim being dragged out and Barbara being rolled out in her wheelchair. Meanwhile, hidden away in a dirty alley, Naruto watched as the Gordons were placed in the back of an armored car and growled in anger. He had planned for Waller to show up to try and take him, the idea being to draw her out in the open, but he hadn't expected her to find him this quickly. It would seem he would need to adjust his plans a little. Now he had to help save the Gordons. They were nice to him and opened their home to him, a complete stranger. He wasn't about to start abandoning his friends. Not for anything. He performed a single hand sign and adopted the henge of Minato the Kingpin and retreated deeper into the alley until he came to the opposite street. Taxi. He shouted as he waved down a familiar yellow car. Luckily, one quickly came to a stop in front of him, with the driver unlocking the doors with a click. Minato almost leapt into the back as the cab driver asked where to, mister, prompting the disguised blonde to answer the Iceberg Lounge. I got a call in the cavalry. Meanwhile, League of Assassins. The form of Ra's al Ghul could be seen sighing deeply as he meditated, trying to clear his mind after being revived by the Lazarus pits once again. The experience being highly taxing on one's mind. Even one as well-trained and strong-willed as his own had difficulty keeping his sanity after repeated revivals after all. However, he was not alone in his chambers. The form of Cheshire could be seen, balancing a throwing dagger on her fingertip. You're absolutely certain of this? He asked, breaking his meditation. His subordinate having reported a particular encounter with someone bearing the name Uzumaki. I am. He didn't have the distinctive blood-red hair, so he's likely of mixed heritage. But he definitely used ninjutsu from the elemental nations. I believe it was the shadow clone technique. Cheshire answered with a grin. The demon's head gave a thin smile as he spoke. I know of that technique. It is an extremely taxing jutsu that even their cages have difficulty mastering. If this boy is who you believe him to be, then Kushina's bloodline still lives. To think the natural enemy of the gods still lived. How exquisite. I would very much like to meet this boy. Might be complicated. Waller and her agency are out to get him. They probably know he has the powers of a beast within him and want to use it to their advantage. Cheshire pointed out, only to earn a scoff from her master. The government dog. How quaint. All the more reason why we should get to him first. And if he truly bears the infamous Kyuubi, then that further proves he is Kushina's child. This will be a most interesting experience. The first I've looked forward to in a long time. Ra spoke in an amused tone. He would be taking point on this outing, very much looking forward to meeting the child of a potential heir he had met some years ago. If Naruto was half as crafty, resourceful and capable as his mother, then he himself might be a worthy heir to lead the League of Assassins. End chapter 3. Bonus scene. I hate clowns. Ivy. What ya doing with that harpoon? Asked the form of Harley Quinn as she watched the form of her longtime friend sharpening the tip of a harpoon before jamming it into a gun. Was thinking about picking up a new sport. Clown spearing. I hate clowns, barring you. And I especially hate Joker. The planned user answered with a sneer as she aimed down the gun sights, pointing it towards an enlarged picture of the clown prince of crime himself, before firing it off. The harpoon flew through the air and planted itself through the picture of the infamous clown right through the chest. Were you killed by a clown pedophile in a past life or something? Harley asked in a deadpan tone, since Ivy's hatred for Joker wasn't really anything new to her. You tell me. You're a shrink, right? How can you figure out that I connect more with plants to avoid interacting with people, and you can't figure out that you're suffering from Stockholm Syndrome potentially mixed with hybristophilia? Ivy asked in a snarky tone, then paused when she noticed the stunned look on Harley's face. What? I read more than books about plants. Ivy muttered, you don't get to be a super criminal and survive in Gotham by being an idiot. Now that she thought about it, she wasn't sure why she was feeling angry at the Joker at this moment. It's not like Quinn had been singing his praises or talking about him that much since they'd left Arkham to work with their new boss. Maybe it had something to do with that freakish nightmare where Ivy was a giant woman fighting plant monsters and then getting harpooned herself. Now she wanted to give her nightmare Joker a taste of his own medicine. Now I feel like I need a shrink. Quinn muttered since she hadn't ever self-diagnosed, and upon hearing Ivy's words, she felt a strong urge to take a long look in the mirror. You did have one. Several in fact. You stabbed one in the knee with a ballpoint pen, bit off the ear of one. You kicked one in the groin so many times he had to get a gender change. And another guy you shoved the barrel of a shotgun up his ass, then fired a rubber bullet while it was still stuck inside, Ivy pointed out, though to be fair, most, if not all of those guys tried to molest Harley or seduce her. It never ended well. Gotta say though, that last one was certainly a painful way to go. Hopefully this Naruto kid would be able to keep Harley from focusing on her mustache for a long time now. Chapter 4. Circles within circles. Part 2. In the back alleys of Gotham, the sounds of combat boots could be heard echoing as a lone man carrying a large case could be seen. The man in question is known as Floyd Lawton, though he is most commonly referred to as Deadshot, one of the foremost snipers and assassins in the world. Just a short while ago, Killer Frost had unexpectedly called him, said something about working for a new boss calling himself the Kingpin. Deadshot had never heard of this man before, but he didn't really care. Frost explained that a job was available that required his expertise, and the target was none other than the fat lady herself. Amanda fucking Waller. Floyd couldn't remember the number of times that he'd be abducted, slapped with an explosive device, and dispatched to do Waller's dirty work just to avoid being blasted to pieces. He wasn't in it for the money this time, this one was personal for him. He was very much looking forward to creating a great big smoking hole right between Waller's eyes. The sniper smirked as he saw the back entrance of the Iceberg Lounge, a pretty frequent entryway for any con, thug, or hired assassin looking for work. The Penguin had a large number of black market dealings and connections. If you were looking for work or the right equipment for the job, this was the place to go. Not to mention it was a good meeting spot for jobs, since none of the Penguin's employees ever asked questions. He passed through the doors and walked down the long hallway till he came upon an elevator and entered inside. He pushed a button to take him down to the basement, which was often the usual meeting spot for accepting jobs. After a few seconds the doors closed and he began his descent. As he waited he thought back to his brief conversation with Frost over the phone. From the sounds of it, this Kingpin seemed to be quickly establishing connections with some big names here in Gotham. He even had the likes of Catwoman, Ivy, and Harley Quinn in his pocket. Catwoman and Ivy were typically loners who always sought out their own agendas. And Harley was almost attached to the Joker's hip at all times, almost like a lovesick puppy constantly craving attention or treats. Poor girl. But now this Kingpin guy had them all working for him in an extremely short amount of time. If he had to guess, the Kingpin must have been unnaturally charismatic and/or persuasive. Eyes like that could be extremely dangerous because you may end up dancing to whatever tune he wants without realizing why you're doing it. The elevator doors opened revealing the forms of a blonde man conversing with Killer Frost, the latter having a chilling smile on her face, no pun intended. And off to the side was some blonde kid with whisker-like markings sitting on a crate. Both Frost and the man she was speaking to turned towards the sniper as he approached them. "Deadshot, right. I'm the Kingpin. Nice to meet you, I appreciate you coming on such short notice." The Kingpin politely greeted as he extended a hand towards the sniper. Deadshot smirked a little, this guy seemed to be the professional type. That was fine with him. He found those superior than you cuz I'm the boss types to be rather annoying. The assassin shook his potential employer's hand and then placed the case he was carrying on the floor. He pushed a button on the side causing it to pop open, revealing the parts and pieces to one of his personal sniper rifles. "No problem. No way in hell I'm going to miss taking a shot at Waller, pun intended." Deadshot spoke with a small chuckle as he began to assemble his rifle. His little joke earning a few laughs from Frost and Kingpin. "Right, unfortunately the plans changed a bit. Waller's on the warpath, just recently she kidnapped both Commissioner Jim Gordon and his daughter Barbara." The Kingpin explained, causing the marksman to nearly drop his equipment to the floor. "You serious? Damn. Waller must be finally going off the deep end. No way in hell the police or Batman are going to be ignoring that. The hell is the fattest hoping to accomplish?" Deadshot asked, his question causing Killer Frost to point towards the boy that was quietly keeping to himself for the moment. "The kid? Waller's going after kids now." Floyd spoke as his eyes narrowed, he wouldn't ever reveal this, but he actually had a certain fondness for kids. He supposed that came naturally from being a father. Or maybe despite being a gun for hire with a death wish, even he had a problem with people who messed around with kids. "That's Naruto. I met him in Arkham. Poor kid has been hunted down by Waller ever since he arrived. She wants to turn him into some kind of super weapon or something. He was with the Gordons, but managed to give Waller the slip." The ICE user explained, giving the marksman the rundown of the situation. "Way I see it, Waller will be bad for business. For all of us. We need to get to her before the Batman does. If he puts her under arrest, she'll get a slap on the wrist and walk out in no time flat. That's where you come in." The Kingpin explained before gesturing to a set of tactical armor and equipment worn by a member of a SWAT team. Deadshot smirked a bit, already guessing the plan. He would plant himself amongst the GCPD and hunt down Waller. Once she was in his crosshairs he'd take the shot and put that damned whale out of everyone's misery. "I get the picture. What about the kid?" the marksman asked, gesturing to the boy. With a smirk, the Kingpin picked up a telephone and gestured for the boy to approach. The whiskered teen nodded as he jogged up to them as the elder blonde put the phone on loudspeaker and made a shush gesture to both Frost and Lawton. After a few seconds, the line picked up and a masculine voice could be heard speaking yellow, "Detective Harvey Bullock." The whiskered teen took a deep breath and shouted, "Bullock. It's Naruto. Waller took the Gordons." At the sound of his voice, one could almost hear Bullock falling out of his seat on the other end. "Whoa. Slow down, kid. What the heck happened?" Bullock asked. Well, he got the gist of it, he had to be certain he heard the boy correctly. "I was at the Gordons' apartment, Waller and her goon squad showed up and kidnapped Jim and Barbara. Jim stalled them so I could get away." Naruto explained with a small yell. In the background Deadshot had to suppress an impressed whistle. This kid seemed all calm before, but now he seemed to be playing the part of a scared little kid tremendously well. Just how much of it was an act, or was it legit? After a few seconds Harvey spoke back. "I hear you, kid. I'll get the GCPD on this straight away. Where are you anyway? I'll send a car for you." "I dunno. I see a building. Called the Iceberg Lounge." The blonde replied, feigning hesitance and uncertainty. But damn was he doing a good job of it. "I gotcha. I'm gonna send someone I trust to get you. We'll get the Gordons back. Take care and don't talk to any suspicious characters." Harvey spoke in a warning tone at the end and then hanged up the phone on his end. "You heard him, boy. He's sending a car for you. Better go outside and meet with him," the new crime lord suggested, earning a nod from the whiskered teen who darted off towards the elevator. Just how much of that little act was for real? The marksman asked out of curiosity since that question had been clawing at his mind for the past 2 minutes. Whoever that boy was, he certainly had a talent. "I'll leave that to your imagination, Deadshot. Not to tell you how to do your job, but you'd best suit up and get ready. We only have a limited window of opportunity before Waller is either arrested or escapes, in either case she may end up out of our reach," the blonde man suggested, prompting the sniper to silently agree and give a two-fingered salute as he picked up the GCPD SWAT gear and went towards the elevator to head back topside himself. Once the marksman was out of sight, the form of the Kingpin smirked before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Killer Frost grinned at the display and muttered to herself, "The boss is just a bag full of tricks." Later. GCPD rooftop. Harvey Bullock sipped at a mug full of warm coffee. His face now a hard mask, though his eyes burned with anger and frustration. He stared up at the sky towards the illuminated symbol of the bat signal as he awaited for the Caped Crusader himself. While he was reluctant to call on the Batman for help, Bullock couldn't deny that the Bat was most likely the fastest bet to locate the Gordons in time. He had already scrambled the entire GCPD and put out a bolo for Amanda Waller. Now he just needed to get the Bat on board and everything would be aces. Detective Bullock. Called out the familiar voice of the Dark Knight, the sudden appearance almost making the detective drop his coffee. But he managed to keep it from spilling as he turned towards the Batman. "Thanks for coming. I just got a call from that Naruto kid. Waller's gone completely bonkers. She's kidnapped Jim and Barbara for hiding him. Way I figure it, she's gonna turn all of Gotham upside down to find him. We gotta shut her down, pronto." Bullock spoke, quickly surmising the situation to the Batman. After a few moments of silence, the Batman nodded and replied, "Understood. I'll find Waller and the Gordons as quickly as possible. What is Naruto's current status?" "I sent Montoya to scoop him up. He'll be fine, you just focus on finding Jim and Barbara, K." Harvey answered, causing the Caped Crusader to vanish as soon as the detective blinked his eyes. For the life of him, he couldn't ever figure out how the Batman could vanish and appear like a ghost. But it wasn't that important right now. What mattered was saving Jim and Barbara and putting Waller exactly where she belonged. Meanwhile. "Barbara? You okay?" Jim asked his daughter in a concerned voice, his hands cuffed to some pipeworks. If he were truthful, these were actually his own handcuffs that Waller's agents used. And it was a secret embarrassment amongst police when their own cuffs are used against them, and to make it worse, they took the key with them. Barbara was off to the side sitting in her wheelchair with no obvious restraints. Apparently she wasn't viewed as a threat or could escape due to her status as a paraplegic supposedly. "Yeah. I'm fine. I'm more worried about you. They were pretty rough with you, Dad." Barbara responded in an equally concerned tone, her father could only laugh a bit. "Please. Those suits hit like school kids. They couldn't hurt me if they tried." From the sounds of Waller chewing out her man, it seems like the boy got away. "That's good. He's probably called the GCPD and they have already contacted Batman." Gordon spoke confidently since he had seen the bat signal illuminating the sky. It was only a matter of time before the Dark Knight himself appeared to rescue them in the nick of time. "Yeah. We'll be fine. Is it just me or is Waller really obsessed with finding Naruto for some reason? It makes almost no sense for her to kidnap us like this." The red-haired girl half shouted and slammed her fist into her armrest angrily. Before their conversation could continue, the sounds of heels clicking against the floor could be heard as a woman approached them, and it wasn't Waller. "You're not wrong, Mrs. Gordon. Director Waller has been chomping at the bit to find that poor boy. And his repeated escapes have been driving her crazy." The woman spoke as she came into the light, holding a tablet in her hand. She then ran a hand through her brown locks and said, "I am Agent Iman Avesta. I can't tell you how sorry I am for this." Jim narrowed his eyes a bit as he sized up this woman. She seemed nice enough, though she wasn't beyond suspicion, since she was still one of Waller's people. "Thanks for the sympathy, if nothing else." Jim replied, his voice still rather bitter as he rattled his cuffs a bit for some emphasis, causing Iman to adopt an apologetic look on her face. "Understood, but listen carefully. There's something going on that you aren't aware of. A few months ago, Waller was contacted by a strange old man. Said that he could offer us a weapon of mass destruction in exchange for technology and state-of-the-art weaponry. In Naruto's home country, he was found guilty and then transferred here to Gotham. Waller was planning to take custody of him directly from Arkham, but the unexpected interference of Killer Frost, Catwoman and Cheshire gave him the chance he needed to escape Arkham. After that, we lost track of him until a surveillance unit tracked him to your own apartment." Avesta explained, her words filling in some of the blanks as to how Waller knew about the boy's abilities and gifts beforehand. "And you're telling us about this? Why?" Barbara asked skeptically, wondering why this Cadmus agent was telling them. A change of heart maybe. This Avesta woman didn't seem to be some yes-man drone like the numerous other agents in Waller's employ. "When I was recruited into Cadmus, I was hoping to do some good. Fight the good fight. Handle delicate situations that no one else could. I had certain scruples about using criminals for suicide missions, but I didn't say anything. What crossed the line for me was chasing after a kid and arresting innocent people for no reason. And that's not all, Waller has been doing all manner of things that are less than legal, all with the intent to undermine the JLA." Avesta answered, her words causing both Barbara and Jim's eyes to widen a bit. Just what in the hell was Waller doing behind the scenes? They were almost scared to know. Barbara pursed her lips and spoke, "Listen. If you really want to help, you need to call the GCPD and tell them where we are. Right now." At that, Jim nodded and spoke up, "She's right. If you help us, we can help get you off the hook. Get you into protective custody or something. Please. Waller can't be allowed to continue with whatever in the hell she's doing." At that, Avesta nodded as she pulled out a cell phone. Waller wiretaps and monitors all agency-issued phones. Fortunately, I like my privacy and bought my own personal one. Who do I contact at the GCPD? Avesta asked as she prepared a text, giving the address they were located in. The commissioner told her to contact Bullock and gave her the needed phone number. Bullock was known to be a rather belligerent cop, but he was still a loyal one and someone Gordon trusted. Once Agent Avesta typed in the appropriate phone number, she sent the text with the push of a button. Now it was all a matter of time before the police arrived. Avesta smirked a little bit since she was now a regular Judas, but at least she had good intentions with this act of insubordination. It would soon be time to nail Waller and crucify her for all the world to see. Some time later. Sirens could be heard echoing across the street, blaring loudly as they surrounded a rather small nondescript office building of some kind that was near the docks. Police boats bobbed lightly in the water, cutting off any escape by boat. Helicopters hovered in the air, shining spotlights on the building while preventing escape by air. And finally, the entirety of the GCPD was now setting up barricades and keeping their guns trained on the building itself, most particularly the windows and doors. Many of the cops were just waiting for Waller and her people to give some kind of excuse to use deadly force. Commissioner Gordon was a well-trusted officer and one of the best leaders they could ever ask for, and his daughter Barbara was a kind and well-spoken girl that almost every officer had met at some point or other, and they were all mad as hell at the agency for kidnapping the Gordons. "All right, Waller. The jig is up. We got you surrounded. Come on out all peacefully and we won't pump your fat guts full of lead. Otherwise, we'll be more than happy to stuff you in a plus-sized coffin." Bullock spoke into a megaphone, calling out the beached whale herself. He doubted that the fat lady would surrender, but at least now it couldn't be said the GCPD didn't give her a chance at surrender. The seconds slowly ticked by into minutes, and so far, they hadn't received any word from anyone inside the building. He knew it was the right place from the text he had received from an anonymous source. At first he was reluctant to follow directions from an unknown source, but it was the best lead they had. And it seems his instincts were right since he could see armed men in the windows, and judging by the monkey suits they wore, they were definitely government-issued jarheads. Bullock's concentration and musing was broken when another squad car rolled up with Officer Montoya inside, along with the kid. Harvey narrowed his eyes since Montoya was supposed to take the Naruto kid to the GCPD, but he wasn't going to argue. He needed every last cop on the scene, and the kid might be able to help draw out Waller if he was willing. Renee stepped out of the car with Naruto following after her. She drew her gun and crouched behind her car for cover as she aimed her pistol at the building. "Bullock. We came as soon as we heard over the radio. What's the situation?" she shouted towards her partner. "We got the place covered top to bottom. SWAT teams, boats, choppers. The whole 9 yards. Snipers are getting set up right now, waiting to take shots if Waller's punks start shooting. Batman either hasn't shown up or he's casing the joint from somewhere looking for his big chance. We haven't heard from the fat lady yet either. Doesn't seem she's much for talking." Bullock reported with a sneer. If he knew anything about his job, it's that when people are backed into a corner are dangerous. Especially if they have no moral compass. The longer this standoff takes, the more at risk the Gordons may be. "Boy. Bullock. Put me out front. Give me a chance to draw Waller out. I'm the one she's looking for," Naruto shouted, offering to put himself on a platter if it could be of any help. He smirked inwardly since it was easy enough to convince Montoya to bring him here, arguing that they would be of better help that way, instead of sitting in the almost abandoned GCPD, since the entire police force had been dispatched. Whether it was his own pheromones or Montoya's sense of justice, or both, she almost immediately agreed. "You sure, kid? If this whole thing goes effing sideways, I can't make any solid promises for your safety." Bullock warned the boy, though if he were honest, he didn't have that many plays. Sending the cops charging in would be a bloodbath, and he wasn't sure how long the Batman would take to make his move, assuming he was around, which Bullock believed he was since the Bat almost always showed up at the right time. "Don't worry about me. I'm more valuable to Waller alive, that aside I can regen. I'll be okay. You tell your sniper guys to be ready. As soon as Waller comes into view, take the shot. 'Cause I don't think Waller's gonna be the negotiating type." The whiskered teen cautioned the detective, making him nod in understanding as he began to relay orders to the snipers to be ready for anything. Taking a deep breath, Naruto marched up towards the building, a spotlight shining on his back as he approached. Clenching his fists, the Jinchuriki shouted out as loud as he could, "Waller. Get your fat ass out here." He could see movement in the windows as he waited for some kind of response. He didn't have to wait long as a set of loudspeakers crackled to life, and he noticed that the security cameras started to focus on him, and then he heard the familiar voice of Waller speak through the speakers, finally decided to stop running. "Good. I was getting tired of chasing you. What can I say? The idea of being someone's attack dog doesn't appeal to me. I'm done running now. And I sure as shit am not going to be a weapon for you. It's all over, Waller. Get out here and these cops won't have to plant you in the ground. Naruto warned her and looked over his shoulder at the nearby rooftops, spotting the various snipers that were in position, one in particular, giving him a quick two-fingered salute that he almost missed. Who do you think you're talking to? I'm called the Wall for a reason, you little brat. Waller responded angrily, her tone making the blonde boy believe that if he could see her, she'd be sprouting a large tick mark on her forehead. The Wall, huh? If you weren't called that because of your stubborn as hell personality, I can certainly think of another reason. Naruto spoke mockingly, hoping to get some kind of reaction out of the fat whale. Speaking of which, this standoff somewhat reminded him about a book he read about a certain captain that was obsessed with a certain whale. This obsession ultimately led to his death as the hunter ended up the hunted. And it seemed like Waller would be met with her end in due time. After a few seconds of silence, Waller's voice boomed out once more, I'm not here to banter, barter, or exchange petty insults. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to step inside and my men are going to put you in my custody. If you continue with this charade, then the Gordons will have to suffer. That's not how this works. The cops have you surrounded and they're angry enough as it is. You're up shit creek without a paddle, Waller. You gotta know that much, or maybe you don't even want to acknowledge when you're beaten. Naruto muttered the last part, finding it strange that Waller didn't seem to be operating with any real logic or reasoning at this point. That woman didn't seem mentally sound at the moment. Before Waller could respond through the loudspeakers, the sounds of gunfire could be heard, followed by sounds of panicked shouting. Naruto smirked since he guessed that the famous Batman had finally made his move. Biting his lip, the boy charged forward and slammed his shoulder into the front doors, nearly taking them off their hinges as he ran inside. He could hear Bullock shouting for the police to move in behind him as he ran through the halls. He saw a sign that showed the direction of the stairs, making him plant his feet to the ground, skidding across the tiled floor as he quickly changed directions. Near the staircase was a set of men wearing tactical armor who lifted up their assault rifles, with one of them shouting, target sighted. Fire away. He can regen. The soldiers pulled the triggers, causing their weapons to start firing bullets in the blonde's direction. Naruto ran forward faster and then screamed in pain as he felt the bullets pierce through him. He felt 3 hitting him in the stomach. 1 in the chest and another pierced through his neck. He growled as he tried to fight through the pain and continued forward. The soldiers kept firing in the boy's direction until their respective magazines ran empty. They tried to reload, but it was too late since the blonde was already on them. He hopped up and slammed his foot down on one man's kneecap, causing the joint to pop out of place with a sickening snap, making him fall to the floor screaming. The other tried using the butt of his rifle to strike Naruto on the head, but he ducked under the swing and sent his fist into the soldier's groin. The trooper doubled over in a silent scream, and then the blonde whipped his leg around like a scythe, knocking the man's legs out from under him. The blonde then rolled forward and used his momentum to slam his elbow into the soldier's throat. The soldier clutched at his throat, rolling from side to side as he made choking noises as he tried to wheeze and gasp for air. Holy shit. Did you see that? Shouted a random officer as Naruto hopped back to his feet and began running up the stairs with all haste. He could hear the collective footfalls of the officers not far behind him as he made his way up to the next floor, where another armored soldier was waiting. He aimed his weapon towards the boy and fired. Naruto felt himself propelled off his feet by the force of the shotgun blast. Naruto did a backflip in the air and planted his feet on the wall and launched himself forward as he leapt guard. This time, the man was caught off guard by the boy's swift recovery as Naruto's form collided with him, sending them both to the floor. Where's Waller? Naruto shouted as he tore the man's shotgun away and chucked it down the stairs before slamming his forehead down into the man's face. His forehead hitting the soldier on the bridge of his nose, causing the bone and cartilage to snap. Where is Waller? Naruto demanded again, headbutting the soldier with each word. The blonde took notice that the trooper was pointing at the door and then motioned left. Satisfied, Naruto released him and left him on the floor to clutch at his broken nose as the police stormed up. Naruto opened the door at the top of the staircase and turned left, finding only a single door at the end of a short hallway. Growling, Naruto kicked the door as hard as possible, causing the center to splinter and then snap in half under the force of his kick. Inside was some kind of security room with small TV screens that were now showing nothing but static. Apparently the camera feeds were killed sometime in the raid, likely when Batman made his move. And sitting behind a desk was Waller herself. The blonde smirked victoriously and spoke, it's all over, Waller. Police are storming the place. And you don't have any cards left to play. The director of Cadmus narrowed her eyes as she stared at the boy, her eyes flickering with hate. That old man was right. You are indeed more trouble than you're worth. She snarled out through gritted teeth. What old man? Who was it that told you about me? Who told you about me being a Jinchuriki? Someone had to have told you. Naruto questioned. There was no possible way Waller could have known about at least some of his abilities unless someone had told her. An old warhick that sold you to me for some more modern gear and tech. No idea how he managed to find and reach out to me. He warned me you were a wild card. But I never expected you to be this much trouble. She answered bitterly, the words warhick striking a chord in the boy's memory. He remembered the Sandame frequently describing a certain man with that exact nickname. Who was it again? Danzo. Danzo Shimura. That was the name. If I had my way, I'd be beating you senseless. But you'll get your comeuppance soon. I promise you. After he'd made that promise, some police officers came up behind him pointing their weapons at the whale with Harvey Bullock also appearing, pointing his revolver at Waller. They say it ain't over till the fat lady sings. And trust me, you're gonna sing like your life depends on it. He promised as he held up a pair of handcuffs. You guys find Jim and Barbara? Naruto asked, hoping that they were okay. He was relieved when Harvey nodded his head and answered the boy, you don't have to worry. They're okay. The bad man already got them loose and we're escorting them outside. Now we're gonna be sending the fat lady up the river. Good. I hope Waller gets her just desserts. Naruto grumbled, trying his best to hide a smirk, especially since he knew what was going to come next. Meanwhile, on a nearby rooftop, Deadshot watched the happenings going on around the building. Keeping a careful watch for the moment Waller showed herself. Of course she would pick a room where there weren't any windows. Now he wished that he'd packed his thermal imaging scope. But sooner or later, she would either be gunned down by police or dragged out in cuffs. The latter was what he was betting on. Because then he'd be able to pull the trigger himself. It was pretty easy infiltrating this operation. He inserted himself amongst the police back in the GCPD, none of them noticing an extra SWAT member. Of course the face mask helped hide his identity. And then the cops got a tip on Waller's location. Now here he was, just waiting for his moment. As soon as he pulled the trigger, he would need to drop everything and run, because it would be at that point the Batman would be hot on his heels. He took notice that the cops were escorting out people from the agency in handcuffs, some of them sporting broken bones and the like, most probably the Batman's handiwork. He saw the commissioner being escorted out as well, pushing a girl in a wheelchair that could only be his daughter. He then saw that whiskered kid from earlier step outside with a strange little smile on his face. And at long last, he saw his target. Waller herself. Deadshot lined up the scope to her head, keeping trained so the bullet will pierce through her head. He slowly squeezed the trigger down and then it happened. The bullet fired off with a loud bang, and the back of Waller's head exploded with blood and bone. With his job finished, the marksman leapt to his feet and took off running, knowing he didn't have much time to get a head start. But before he could jump to the next roof, the Batman had already appeared on the other side. Damn, you're quick. That's okay though. My job here is done. Floyd spoke in a satisfied tone, he had already killed Waller. And now the Batman had arrived to apprehend him. He could try taking a shot at the Caped Crusader, but he was in too good a mood for that song and dance, and he didn't want to spoil it all with cracked ribs and the like. You know what? Fuck it. You got me. It was worth it. The sniper muttered and then held his hands out to let the Batman cuff him. He wasn't going to ruin this night with a fist fight with the Bat. Especially since it almost always ended with broken bones. Who hired you to kill Waller? The Batman asked, cautiously approaching until he removed Deadshot's trademark wrist-mounted weaponry and then put the cuffs on him with a small click. Wrong question. Who wouldn't hire me to kill the fat lady? She's not exactly Ms. Popular. Who knows? Maybe I did it just because. This could have been personal for me. Deadshot answered with a dismissive tone. Batman stared at him with a hard glare, unbeknownst to the marksman, the Bat was scanning his biometric readings, and from his heart rate, the Batman could see he was being truthful, at least in some regard. You're going to be put away for this, Deadshot. The Batman spoke in a blunt manner, earning a small scoff from the assassin. Yeah. But for how long really? Floyd joked since it became something of a running gag amongst the super criminal community. How long would it be before they escaped again and continued their escapades? Well, to be honest, Floyd wasn't a stranger to prisons. It was actually like a small vacation for some people like himself. 3 square meals a day, free room and board, and the low-tier crooks were smart enough to give him a wide berth. He actually wouldn't mind a little downtime, especially now that Waller was food for the worms. Meanwhile, back amongst the massive police and squad cars, Naruto stood to the side with the Gordons as the remains of Waller was taken away on a gurney. At least the COD was obvious given the gaping hole in her head. Glad to see you guys are okay. How'd you send a message out to the cops? Naruto asked out of curiosity since he knew that the fat lady would have had any communication devices confiscated. We had some help from an agent I'm in Avesta. My men will be taking her into protective custody for questioning. Given her help and readiness to cooperate, Avesta's going to be free in no time. She seems like a good woman. Jim answered as he waved towards a brown-haired woman who waved back as she was ushered into a squad car. Naruto Avesta told us about Barbara tried to speak but was cut off by the whiskered teen who said I know. Someone from my old home traded me for weapons and tech. Waller already told me before she was killed. This means that there's more at work here than just the whale and her goons. Both of the Gordons exchanged looks before nodding to each other, with Jim speaking. Yeah. That about sums it up. Listen, I know you've had a hard time and it is likely that it'll only get worse from here. I promise you though, we'll do our absolute best to keep you safe. The blonde mad to himself as he adopted a thinking pose, considering the commissioner's words. Finally the boy answered, I appreciate the offer, but it seems like being around me could put you and Barbara in danger. This is my problem, from my old home. I'll handle it myself, but I promise to keep in touch if I need a hand. At his words, Barbara had a saddened look on her face, since she knew the Batman himself often tried to go it alone, almost always pushing himself to the limit to go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure those around him didn't suffer. Even if he himself suffered. Where will you go, Naruto? What will you do? She asked him in a worried tone. With luck, I'll be going forward. And I'll try to find a place I can belong in this unforgiving world we live in. Sayonara, I look forward to seeing you all again. Naruto answered as he gave a small two-fingered salute to make his swift exit, only to be stopped when the commissioner clapped a hand on his shoulder. That's crazy talk, son. I can't let you strike out on your own like this. Jim spoke in a concerned tone, not liking the boy's current mindset or intentions of taking his chances all on his own. Like I said, I'll be in touch. And whoever said anything about letting me? The boy asked with a chuckle. He snapped his fingers and his form was instantly replaced by a trash can, making both Barbara and Jim wonder how he did that. Jim knew he had to put out a bolo for the kid now. Gotham was a dangerous place after all, especially for unsupervised kids. Barbara however had a gut feeling that Naruto would be okay. She had no idea why exactly, but it's like she could almost feel how confident and self-assured he was. Almost like he knew what he was doing. Nevertheless, she would keep a close eye out for him over the Bat family's vast information network. If Naruto ever showed up on her scans she would know about it and be able to monitor his safety. Now she just needed to inform Bruce of what Agent Avesta had revealed previously, although now she couldn't help but wonder what else was Waller and Cadmus up to. What kind of activities could they have been doing in the shadows to unnerve Avesta? Truthfully, Barbara was a little scared to find out. Because power without moral restraint was the most dangerous kind and could often yield highly unpredictable results. But Naruto. Anzo Shimura. I had heard of your ambition, but I never thought you'd be so foolish as to trade a Jinchuriki so carelessly. What was your plan, old-timer? Maybe you were planning to sell me and then steal me back. The Jinchuriki muttered to himself in thought, now adopting his Minato guise to avoid suspicions and the police. Truth be told, he wasn't sure why he picked the Yondame's form for his kingpin persona. Maybe it was because he still looked up to the Yondame, maybe because his appearance was easy to remember since it was naturally similar to his own. Maybe it was a combination of the two, regardless it still did the job of throwing people off who weren't aware of his true nature. On a more important note, he was a rogue Jinchuriki now. And it would only be a matter of time before those from other nations found out he was now fair game. Sure, Konoha would try to keep it a secret but someone would talk or find out the truth. And then he would be sought out for his power. Naruto grit his teeth slightly in annoyance. There was a time when he was prepared to lay down his life for the village, to do whatever it took to show the people there he wasn't the Kyuubi itself. He was once prepared to do anything for those he cared about and he still was. But he was finished being a victim. He was finished being persecuted because of what and who he was. No. He now had a chance to call the shots. To truly prove himself. Here in Gotham, he has accomplished more inside of a few days than he had in his entire life in Konoha. Gotham was a clean slate for him. A chance to make something of himself in both the lower and higher tiers of the city. He wasn't the dead last tier in Gotham, he was the kingpin. A crime lord that was swiftly on the rise. Rupert Thorne would soon be dead in but a few hours and then his gang and criminal enterprise would be all for Naruto to claim for himself. His musing was broken when thunder began to rumble in the sky and rain started to pour down as well, some droplets hitting his face until an umbrella opened and the blonde found a girl standing next to him. He looked over his shoulder and found that it was actually his mysterious limo driver. A young woman with pink and chocolate brown hair with two different colored eyes, one pink and one brown. She was known as Neapolitan and that was pretty much all that was known of her since she wasn't the talkative type. Though for some unknown reason, Naruto could perfectly understand her. Neo? How the hell did you find me? The kingpin asked since he was wondering how he'd get transportation. He was about to try and flag down a taxi, though that didn't seem necessary with Neo here. She answered with a small smile, tipping her bowler hat slightly in respect to her boss. Wow. Really? You're incredibly dedicated to your job, aren't you? I certainly wouldn't want to get on your bad side. He responded, already guessing that Neo was a pro since she had successfully followed him without any difficulty. He guessed that she probably tracked him from the second he had left the Iceberg Lounge in Officer Montoya's car. How much did you hear while I was thinking out loud? He asked her, making a mental note to avoid thinking aloud in the future. She responded, then gave a reassuring smile while tipping her hat to him. Thanks for your discretion. I dunno why, but you seem like the loyal type. Since you were already listening, and you claim to be a good listener. I'll be needing to prepare myself for the eventuality of other unsavory characters coming to hunt me down now. He responded as he clasped his hands behind his head with a sigh. Neo tapped her chin in thought, then had an aha moment as she snapped her fingers and pointed in a certain direction. She exclaimed and then pulled out a newspaper from seemingly thin air which she presented to her boss. Naruto skimmed over the contents and saw an article about Metropolis's Strikers Island Penitentiary, home to numerous super criminals from Superman's rogues gallery including Livewire, Silver Banshee, and other criminals of renown in Metropolis. That's pretty interesting. I might have to look into that later once my affairs in Gotham are in order. Thanks Neo, you seem to be pretty reliable. The Kingpin happily remarked, causing his newest associate to nod in satisfaction and then gestured towards the waiting limousine. She popped open the door for him, allowing him entry. Once he was inside, she shut the door and made her way to the driver's seat and awaited his instructions. I have nowhere else to be for the evening. I don't think I've had much time for myself since my arrival in Gotham. And with Waller gone, maybe I can have a moment's peace. If it's all the same, could you just drive around and show me the sights, Neo? The blonde requested with a tired smile, finally feeling like he could just sit down and have a moment to himself. Neo nodded and started the engine for the limo to begin the grand tour of Gotham for her new boss. Neo smirked a little to herself. She had never expected to have a boss that could understand her, even when no words were spoken. She had worked for some time now as a freelancer, doing odd jobs, serving as a bodyguard, a spy, and an assassin. She had even once gotten an invitation from the League of Assassins due to her talents, but for some reason she could feel there was something truly special about the Kingpin. Now she knew for certain there was beyond all doubt. It would be interesting to see what he would do in the criminal underworld. Later. Arkham Asylum. Please. Don't do this. I'll do anything you ask. Screamed the form of Quincy Sharp as he was being dangled from the rooftop of the administration building. His eyes almost bulging and his face turning a little green as he could only look at the ground. You ever see what happens to a human head when it smashes against the ground? It kinda reminds me of what happens when a watermelon explodes. Teased a female voice as she tightened her grip on Sharp's legs and started to sway him from side to side, her words making him make some gagging noises at the mental image. You disappoint me, Sharp. I shall ask you once more. Where is the boy? Asked a form of Ra's al Ghul with a sneer. His agent Hugo Strange, having spent many months working on and manipulating this pathetic little man's mind from the shadows, and yet Sharp was so inept that he couldn't even keep track of a simple child, let alone run a proper prison. I already told you. Waller came to collect the boy. But he escaped with some help from the inmates. I had to get rid of him before he exposed me for what I did in the asylum. The last I heard, he was in police custody, but now he's gone again. Quincy tried to explain himself, trying to say anything if it meant appeasing the demon's head. This, however, had the opposite effect. Exposed you? So then you mean to say you're already compromised? HMPH. As expected of a disposable pawn, you have lost all value to the League then. Roz muttered angrily and then sent a subtle nod to Cheshire. Getting the message loud and clear, the black-haired assassin quickly released the warden from her grip, sending him plummeting to the ground where a sickening thud could be heard. I was there when Waller showed up. I helped fight off her people to give Naruto a chance to escape. He most likely employed the water walking technique to run across the bay to safety. If he knows the hinge technique, he could easily hide himself in Gotham with ease. Cheshire spoke, clicking her tongue in annoyance since they had arrived too late. Indeed. Though he has to come up for air at some point or another. And when he does, we shall find him. After all, we are the League of Assassins for a specific reason. It's not a matter of if we find our intended target, but when I shall be dispatching the entire League to find him. The first person to find this boy and bring him to me shall be handsomely rewarded. Any who do him harm I shall personally execute. Ra spoke as he turned around and was met by a legion of assassins who all bowed in acknowledgement to his orders. Amongst their numbers was Talia, who was reading a local newspaper for any relevant information about Naruto's last known whereabouts and activities on the second page. And on the front page was an article titled Thorn Dead. Unknown crime boss Kingpin suspected. Then Chapter 4. Chapter 5. Laying the groundwork. Part 1. Almost a week had passed since the assassination of Amanda Waller and the disappearance of Naruto Uzumaki. The Bat family worked tirelessly around the clock trying to locate the boy, but even with their vast experience, skills, information network, and the cooperation of the GCPD, Naruto was nowhere to be found in or outside of Gotham. It was almost as if he'd simply vanished altogether and dropped out of existence. The legendary Caped Crusader was very good at finding people, but even he was baffled out how Naruto could have disappeared. And unless he acquired some kind of clue to help locate him, the case was stone cold for now. Having no choice but to shelve that particular case, the Batman turned his attention to three particular happenings that seemed to coincide with one another. Firstly, there was an unsettling peace in Gotham now, after the unexpected death of Rupert Thorne and the reincarceration of Joker after outing on Titan, the streets had become eerily quiet. Aside from the occasional mugging or purse snatching, crime was almost non-existent now, since the major gangs of Gotham were laying low for reasons unknown. Secondly, a new crime lord seemed to be on the rise known only as Minato, the Kingpin Nemesis. The Bat family did all they could to investigate him, even quadruple-checking every known database, in every government, and even the dark web, but not a single trace of him could be found. What was already known was that he had several super criminals in his pocket, and more recently there were rumors circulating that even more villains were thinking about joining him, and that he was or is soon to be in talks with the other major crime lords of Gotham. Typically, it was an extremely rare occurrence whenever supervillains joined forces, and most usually it was in small groups that had a shared goal, though it most often ended in a double cross. And even Luthor's Legion of Doom was only a loose affiliation that only worked together for the sake of standing against the JLA, and even then they usually conspired against each other for dominance. If someone powerful or charismatic enough could truly unite them, it could spell trouble on a major scale, given how numerous super criminals were and their destructive capabilities. Thirdly, the League of Assassins had been spotted repeatedly all throughout Gotham, and even the Demon's Head himself had been seen. Their movements were widespread and sporadic, almost as if they were searching for someone or something. But who or what could they be after? And somewhere out there, possibly in the middle of Gotham City amidst the chaos, was one lost boy that was far from home. There was only one logical conclusion: to start combing away at this building mess as quickly and efficiently as possible. It was time to call in some favors. Meanwhile, "Gentlemen, I have to say, I'm quite disappointed in all of you," spoke the form of a certain blonde man as he stared down at the forms of some no-name thugs. Since the death of Rupert Thorne and his top men, there was of course a power vacuum in Thorne's organization, and so the Kingpin had to swoop in and take over as quickly as possible. Naturally, there were a few holdouts. Some fools stayed loyal to a dead mobster, but most of them were simply greedy and thought they could strike out on their own or take over the organization for themselves. Their efforts didn't end well. Common thugs didn't hold a candle to super criminals after all, and the Kingpin had some pretty tough customers in his arsenal. These idiots tried to put up a fight. It didn't really do them much good, since they were either pummeled by Quinn or Catwoman or frozen by Killer Frost. Ivy, however, was currently busy elsewhere with a different project. "I did give you the chance to willingly join up. I was even going to pay you more than Thorne did to show my generosity and understanding nature. But then you guys had to start making trouble." The blonde man spoke the last part in a somewhat condescending tone, given that he had extended an olive branch to them and they smacked it out of his hand. The Kingpin preferred to exercise a measured approach. If negotiations failed, then he'd resort to more violent methods. The apparent boss of the crew spat on floor at the Kingpin's feet and shouted angrily, "Fuck you, you chink bastard." At that, the Kingpin and his crew frowned deeply. Racism? Really? Not cool. Quinn, Frost. I'll leave these guys to you. I think Ivy mentioned something about needing fresh fertilizer. Cat. You're with me, we're due for a meeting. The blonde man spoke as he walked away with the cat burglar following close behind. Fortunately, this was the last of the holdouts, and now they were in full control of the late Thorne's turf. As they exited the building, the sounds of screams, blows landing, ice crackling and flesh tearing could be heard. Outside, Neapolitan was patiently waiting by the car as she opened the door for them, allowing the two to enter inside. Once they were in, Neo shut the door and made her way to the driver's seat to start up the limo. Inside the passenger area, the form of Minato vanished in a puff of smoke as Naruto allowed himself a moment to relax. He had to admit that maintaining his Minato persona was more exhausting than he anticipated. It would be an almost welcome relief when he no longer had to hide behind a mask, but at the same time it was for the best that his true self be kept a secret. Danzo was still out there somewhere, potentially plotting something, and there was the possibility that the other shinobi nations would try and take advantage of his rogue status. But perhaps what he was most concerned with was the fact that due to his criminal status, he may end up going against Gordon and the GCPD, and there were a number of good people among them. If only there were a way he could work with them instead of against them, maybe if he played his cards right, there could be something on your mind. Selena asked him as she crossed one leg over the other, a sly smile on her face. The only response the whiskered teen gave was a shrug of his shoulders. Nervous? She asked him, causing him to nod his head and reply sarcastically, well, it's not like I'm going to a meeting full of cutthroat gangsters and mob bosses. So no pressure. Naruto spoke since he had to meet with Two-Face, Penguin and the ventriloquist. While they had been friendly to him and helped him find his footing, it was still an uncertainty that they would continue aiding him. It would be for the best to try and keep them on his side. After all, they knew this city and all the players better than he did, and it would be easier and faster to work with them and not against. Selena then looked out of the corner of her eye and saw something, a very familiar figure. Boss. Best put on your game face. I think we're about to have some company in a moment. She warned him, prompting him to nod and resume his Minato facade. And not a moment too soon as a loud thud sound came from the limo's rooftop. The skylight window was smashed open as a caped figure descended, and in response, Catwoman smiled and spoke two words: the Batman. The Kingpin stiffened in his seat a bit, now finding himself face to face with the famed vigilante that numerous criminals feared and in some cases held a grudging respect for. The legendary caped crusader himself. From the driver's seat, Neo lowered the partition and looked towards the blonde man with a scowl. Don't worry about it, Neo. Just keep driving. He instructed her, largely because he didn't want to raise a fuss and he didn't want her to risk getting hurt if the Batman's reputation for broken bones and cracked skulls was anything to go by. The Kingpin cleared his throat and then asked calmly, something I can do for you, Batman? Instead of answering him, the vigilante turned toward Selena with his usual scowl, his eyes seeming to narrow a bit as he spoke. It's not like you to align yourself with mob bosses, Selena. True. Though he did bail me, so I kind of have a bit of debt to work off. And so far, he's been treating me really well. Unlike someone I might know. The cat burglar spoke as she looped an arm around the blonde man's shoulder, a saucy grin on her face, which seemed to widen a bit as the Batman stared her down. He guessed that she was trying to mess with him, likely trying to invoke some kind of reaction. He wasn't going to be playing that game with her. He turned his attention to the mob boss himself and spoke, you've been credited for the death of Rupert Thorne. Wow. Talk about blunt. The Kingpin had to give the man credit, he certainly didn't waste any time. Being credited for and actually doing the deed are two entirely different things. The disguised blonde spoke coolly, a little smirk on his face which faded when the Batman leaned in close, real close, until his face was but inches away and the blonde felt a bit uncomfortable, but he wasn't going to crack under the pressure. You were seen speaking to Thorne, making threats against him. And he was believed to be poisoned, most likely by Poison Ivy, who has been seen associating with you according to certain sources. Batman spoke in a matter-of-factly tone. The blonde man frowned a bit at the mentioning of sources, though he came to the conclusion that the vigilante likely interrogated some of Thorne's, now the Kingpin's, men, before coming straight to him. I think the courts call that circumstantial evidence. I'm sure that there was no shortage of people that wanted the man dead. The Kingpin answered with a shrug as the vigilante continued staring him down. Well, Batman was truly intimidating. He wasn't as frightening as a certain sunset ninjutsu, hence why the blonde was able to keep his cool. The world's greatest detective said nothing since this new mob boss did bring up a valid point and argument. There were certainly plenty of others that would wish for Thorne's death. And while the Kingpin had reaped the spoils from Thorne's empire and had the obvious means to poison Thorne thanks to Ivy, there was currently no evidence to prove it. And word of mouth from a vigilante that worked outside the law wouldn't hold up in court. The Batman straightened his posture, finally leaving the blonde's personal space as he spoke, consider yourself on notice. I'll be watching you. Carefully. And everyone affiliated with you. In response, the Kingpin mockingly gave a two-fingered salute as the caped crusader pulled out his grappling gun and fired it before zipping off out of sight. The atmosphere seemed to relax as Minato let out a sigh of relief, knowing that he'd have to be more careful in the future if he was going to continue to tangle with the likes of the Batman. Selena pursed her lips for a moment, then spoke a word to the wise. You should watch yourself. Batman is the kind of person that is suspicious of virtually everything and everyone. Not to mention he's a co-founder of the Justice League, which means he has connections to a number of other heroes that could make life difficult. The Kingpin hummed in thought at that, having seen several newspaper articles and news reports on television. One top-tier hero could be a problem, but a veritable army or coalition of superheroes. He definitely wanted to avoid that. Speaking of the news, he remembered seeing something about what Warden Sharp Guy having committed suicide in Arkham. A real shame. He had hoped to extract his pound of flesh from that bastard and discover more about what he was doing and who he was making deals with. Well, that was out of his hands now, it was best to focus on what he could do. And right now, it was to continue settling in and establishing himself in Gotham. He couldn't afford to lose his cool or get lazy, he still had a long way to go yet. He glanced out the window and sighed a bit, feeling a little homesick if he were honest. Not because he missed the village of Konoha itself, but because he missed his friends there. Anko, Kurenai, Hana, Nico, the Sandaime, Konohamaru, Ino, Hinata, he hoped to someday see them again, but he suspected that may be a long way off. His musing was broken when he felt something soft press against his cheek and took notice that Selena had kissed him on the cheek, a sultry smile on her face as she spoke a little something for good luck. He relaxed and gave a warm smile in thanks, he was certainly gonna need it. A little later, the Iceberg Lounge's basement. The sounds of loud cheering and blows landing could be heard as the Kingpin walked through the basement, numerous sets of bleachers being occupied by numerous people. From the looks of them they all appeared to be gangsters and thugs that are likely affiliated to the mob bosses present. From the looks of it, it appeared that an underground fight ring was going on as some grunts pummeled away at each other, likely trying to impress their potential employers. The mob bosses in question could be seen sitting in a private box, giving them a perfect bird's-eye view of the violent brawls and separating themselves from the chaos below as the audience cheered, jeered or made bets on who would win. The disguised Uzumaki paid no mind to this as he, Neo and Catwoman circled around to the private box where the others were waiting for them. Ah, the Kingpin finally arrives. Fashionably late it would seem. The Penguin greeted in a jovial tone as he sipped some champagne with both Two-Face and Peyton doing the same, the latter not having her other half Scarface present, thank Kami. The Jinchuriki smiled as he replied, sorry about that, had to finish up with the last of the holdouts, and I had a brief run-in with your famed Batman. The three mob bosses tensed up at the mentioning of their longtime foe as they stared at the blonde, and judging from his currently undamaged appearance, it seemed he had been spared a beating from the Batman. It was quite shocking to be honest. Surprising. You don't look like you had the stuffing beaten out of you. Two-Face muttered as he rolled his trademark coin across his knuckles. You got me there. I think he was trying to spook me, make me slip up and say something incriminating. Maybe he was also sizing me up. Can't say for sure. But I can tell he's not the kind of person you want to mess with. The disguised mob boss as he took his seat next to the ventriloquist who poured him a glass of champagne and gave him a flirtatious wink as well. Count yourself lucky that you're not in a full body cast then. Harvey spoke in a half-joking and half-serious voice, earning some chuckles from the others as Minato took a sip of his drink. The Penguin then tipped his top hat and asked all that aside, old bean, now that you have finished claiming the late Thorn's turf and your Amanda Waller is no longer chasing you, what happens next? The others all looked at the young mobster in quiet anticipation since that had been the number one question on their minds and were very much eager to see his reaction. Minato dropped his disguise for the moment and relaxed into his seat as he pondered for a moment on what he wanted to say, or more likely how he was going to say it. He then asked no one in particular, how long have you been in the criminal enterprise? How long have you been a mob boss? The other bosses exchanged glances at one another as both Selena and Neo stood off to the side, listening in quiet interest. Finally, the Penguin responded, we have been at this for quite some time, dear boy. What's your point? I'm getting to that. How long have you guys been conspiring against each other and other mob bosses? How many times have you attempted to do your own thing? How many times have you fought against each other over certain disputes only to lose more than you gained? The whiskered teen continued to ask them, earning some thoughtful expressions from them. His words slowly clicking in their minds as they started to see what he was getting at. Sure, they sometimes worked together through alliances of convenience or mutual benefit, but more often than not, they were often trying to outdo or outplay one another to try and climb ever higher. And most often it didn't work out due to their own erroneous judgment or through the intervention of the legendary Bat family. Am I figuring it's only a matter of time until we're inevitably at each other's throats for some reason or another. But instead of being constant rivals, we can be partners. All working together towards a common goal. Naruto spoke with a large grin, his words earning some chuckles from the other bosses. You really think it's that easy, boy? We just start getting all buddy-buddy and everything's all sugar and rainbows? Harvey asked in a slightly sarcastic tone as he casually flipped his coin. Why can't it be? On your own, I think you guys have reached your limits, but if we pool our strengths and resources together, the sky's the limit. You all have your own gangs, your own territories and whatnot. Instead of fighting over scraps, we can be something greater, stronger, better. The young boy spoke, earning the attention of the other bosses. He made it all sound so simple, and yet for some reason, they couldn't help but hang on to his every word and find that they actually believed it. For many years they had fought and competed with one another through gang wars and shady dealings, and when they weren't fighting or plotting against each other, they were trying to kill the Batman, only to be foiled at every turn. But if they worked together, they could indeed be something more. Harvey stared down at his coin in an open palm, almost as though he were debating with himself and his other half. The Penguin gained a thoughtful expression as he stroked his chin, finding the idea to be rather intriguing. And finally Peyton glanced over towards the corner where a duffel bag waited, which contained Scarface. The bag was slightly zipped open, revealing one of the eyes the puppet that seemed to be angrily staring at her, almost daring her to do something stupid. Well, you've been unusually successful so far, and I'm interested in seeing how this goes. So for the time being, we'll play along and make a judgment call based on the results. Both Harvey and Two-Face spoke in turn, coming to a rare consensus as they pocketed the coin, with the Penguin and Ventriloquist nodding in agreement since that seemed fair. The fact that you're considering it is a good sign. Now here's what I'm thinking, with the Warden of Arkham dead there's a major power vacuum now, and there's also the fact that elections are coming up as shown by the damn political advertisements that keep appearing everywhere. The young blonde mentioned since he hated those kinds of advertisements that showed up on the TV. If somehow or other we can gain control of Arkham and the mayor's office, well that can give us a lot of leeway, now wouldn't it? Naruto asked with a grin, after all, if they controlled the prison and mayor's office, it would be much easier to secure releases for certain inmates, loosen regulations, and who knows what else that may be able to do. An intriguing prospect to be certain. I myself have attempted to get elected as mayor, but it ultimately failed. The Penguin admitted as he took a sip of his beverage. Were it not for the fact that he was a known criminal, he likely would have tried again, albeit more carefully. But our young friend here is new blood. The Kingpin hasn't been arrested for any crimes as of yet, and if he is careful he might just be able to squeak through. Harvey spoke, a little smile on his face since he knew the law inside and out, and he was quite familiar with election campaigns, due to his time as the former DA. Naruto's persona as the Kingpin was quite intriguing, he was young, mysterious, handsome, all good qualities. Now he just needed a clever or slightly embellished backstory, some charity work and whatnot, and he could very well become the youngest mayor in Gotham, not that everyone would know his actual age of course. It could still work. Right, we have to think bigger. We can't let any past or current grievances get in our way. From today on, we shall be an alliance, we shall be comrades in arms. We are no longer just 4 mob bosses with 4 gangs and 4 territories. We are a council now. Working together, we shall attain greater heights than we ever would alone. Naruto spoke with a large grin, his voice sounding certain and charismatic. Council huh? And who's the top boss of the council? You big boy? Peyton asked with a sultry wink, earning a small chuckle from the whiskered teen. But the 4 of us, right now. There is no top boss but if and when we recruit more to our inner circle, we can hold an election or something. For now, consensus or majority rules when it comes to big decision making. You can still do your own stuff if you want or need to, but double-crossing isn't allowed, nor can you endanger the interests of anyone that are part of our organization or council. We can't afford to turn on each other for any reason, and that means no trying to kill each other, no blackmailing, and no selling out. Agreed? Naruto asked as he crossed his arms, earning nods of consent from the other bosses. To the Kingpin. Cobblepot shouted in his agreement as he raised a glass to their young associate, with both Two-Face and Peyton doing the same as they too shouted to the Kingpin. With that said and their toast done, they were now officially an alliance. Their moment was interrupted by the sounds of even louder cheering and loud painful screams echoed from the fighting arena outside. Naruto donned his Minato form again and looked out the window with his associates to see what all the commotion was about. In the center of the ring was a woman with chalky white skin, black hair, red eyes, and black markings around her eyes that made her appear like a punk rocker or a certain heavy metal band. She was standing over a number of other grunts who were now sporting twisted limbs or their heads were cracked open like shattered watermelons. My, she's quite the bruiser. The Penguin noted, recognizing some of the men who were dead or injured, and he knew for sure that those guys weren't pushovers in fisticuffs. The woman in question angrily growled and beat her chest, letting out a loud roar as she shouted, "Who else wants some?" One person crept up behind her, a crowbar in hand as he took a swing at her only for the weapon to bounce off her head harmlessly as the man stumbled back. With a growl, the white-skinned woman quickly turned to face him and swung with a powerful right hook. The blow connected with the man's jaw, causing a sickening crack sound, and then his lower jaw was almost instantly torn off. He lifelessly fell to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut as the woman spat on his body. Feigning a look of interest, the Kingpin descended from the private box of his allies and approached the woman with his hands in his pockets, his movements slow and deliberate so that she wouldn't perceive him as a threat or mistake him for a potential combatant, since he had a feeling it would be a very bad idea to throw fists with this lady. Seeing him approach, the brute of a woman crossed her arms and asked, "The hell do you want, fancy man? You wanna go around? Didn't end too well for these guys. And if you're one of those kinds of guys that think you can pay for my body, I'll fucking rip off your and shove it up your ass." The Kingpin couldn't help but chuckle a bit, the threat reminding him of his dear friend Anko if someone ever tried getting into her pants. A threat of castration was usually enough to scare off any potential creeps. "Actually, I believe that I want to hire you. I'm in need of people with certain talents, and you're obviously very good at cracking open skulls. You interested? Sure. Was the white-skinned woman's reply as she scratched her rear end, her quick reply catching the kingpin off guard since he was expecting more negotiations to be involved. That was an awfully fast response. What can I say? I'm not picky, if the cash is good and I get to beat up people, it's cool. And if it doesn't work out, I can go back to underground fights and stuff. And you're the first person not to crack some kind of heavy metal joke straight out of the gates. Name's Imar Rojas, but I go by Crush. What am I supposed to call you? And if you say something like call me daddy, I'll rip off your balls and make you chew on them. Slowly. Like a cow chewing cud. Get me? The crimson-eyed woman spoke with a scowl. The more this woman talked, the more Naruto liked her. She was tough, fierce, and she wasn't exactly modest. In a lot of ways, she did indeed remind him of Anko. You can call me whatever you want, I'm not big on being all formal if it's not necessary. But in public, I'm Minato Namikaze, and currently in the criminal underground, I'm known as the Kingpin. He replied with a sincere smile, earning a small grin from Crush. Cool. You seem like you might be an okay boss. Crush spoke as she scratched her nose a bit, earning a small nod from the blonde. I try my best to do right by my people and color me curious, but what's with the he tried to ask at the end, only to be cut off by the thuggish woman. The rocker jet up. Well, it sure as shit isn't makeup. The white skin and black markings. Completely natural. Red eyes too, so no contacts. And if you ask me if my asshole is white or black, I'll take a syringe and start shooting ghost pepper sauce down your pisser. Got it? She asked, her constant threats of castration earning some snorts from the blonde as he found it rather humorous. You find that funny? She asked him with slight annoyance, though she had to admit it wasn't often that someone wasn't intimidated by her threats, especially since she was more than capable of backing them up. Her new boss shook his head and answered back, sorry. Didn't mean to laugh, but your threats reminded me of someone I had a certain fondness for. You're a lot like her actually. This better not turn into a sappy romcom or some shit. But whatever, if you need me to bust down some doors or kick the shit out of some unlucky douchebag, I'm your gal. She spoke and then held up an open palm, hawked up some saliva and spat in her own hand before extending it to him. He smirked and spat into his own hand and then grabbed her open hand for a firm shake, a small squish sound being heard. But that done, Crush asked, so boss. What comes next? At her question, the Kingpin paused for a moment as he looked up to his allies, a large grin on his face as he slowly nodded to them, the answer to Crush's question being quite simple really. Now we get to work. Some days later. Nothing. Not a single thing. Asked a form of Commissioner Gordon as he paced around his office, his favorite pipe in hand as he had finished reading over the reports supplied by his officers. He had been working with Batman and his other allies to find information on suspicious activities, such as any missing Arkham inmates, the activities of this Kingpin, and perhaps most importantly in Jim's eyes, finding the missing Naruto. The kid his age shouldn't be out on his own, especially not in a harsh and unforgiving city like Gotham. As it stood now, it was almost impossible to remember Gotham's golden age, much less if it ever had one. City Hall was utterly corrupt and continuously stagnating, criminals all but controlled the streets in numerous parts of the city, and of course came the matter of the super criminals that could flatten the city if the Bat family weren't there to stop them. As much as they had done for the city, they could only make so much progress by punching out random crooks. Not that Gordon would say that to any of their faces. People like Waller, for instance, often got away with their less than legal antics. Many on the force believed she had gotten what she deserved, and as loath as he was to admit it, Gordon shared their sentiments. Gordon believed himself to be a practical sort of man. It was tough to balance out personal morality and the letter of the law while maintaining one's integrity. If Waller hadn't been shot dead, it was more than likely that she would have walked out of prison the next day. After her death, the US government predictably denied that Waller was a part of any agency and insisted that she acted alone and that Cadmus was a rogue organization which would now be officially hunted and shut down. In other words, they denied everything and were now running damage control to clean up their own mess. One of the few Cadmus agents that got away relatively unscathed was one Imena Vesta, who had aided in the Gordon's rescue and alerting the police to Waller's location. She had been fully cooperative and helped reveal the locations of numerous black sites that weren't supposed to exist. A few of them in Gotham, to which Gordon had his people working on in order to ensure any evidence or dangerous materials didn't vanish unexpectedly. There was no telling if some people might try to take it for themselves or sell it on the black market. God, he hated government spooks and cloak and dagger stuff. As for Avesta herself, she was doing quite well for herself here on the GCPD's roster and had proven a very reliable assistant for the commissioner. His musing was interrupted when he heard a knock at the door, prompting him to call out, "Come in." He hoped it was one of his officers coming in to give him some kind of good news, especially about Naruto. Barbara seemed awfully worried and broken up since the kid vanished into thin air. Instead, he was greeted by a man with blonde hair and a strange-looking girl that seemed to have a unique-looking color scheme of white, pink and brown, like a certain kind of ice cream. "Can I help you, sir?" Gordon spoke in a professional manner. The man in question grinned as he replied, "I was actually hoping to help you, Commissioner. My name is Minato Namikaze, though some people refer to me as the Kingpin, and this young lady is my associate Neo." At the mentioning of his epithet, Jim stiffened up as he crossed his arms. Either this guy was bold or crazy to walk right into his office. If he tried anything funny, the entire GCPD would rain hellfire on him. "The Kingpin, eh? Word is you're the newest crime boss to hit Gotham. That you've got super criminals in your pocket and that you murdered Rupert Thorne. You here to confess your crimes or something? Because that would make things much easier for both of us." The commissioner spoke sternly, earning some chuckles of amusement from the blonde man. "That's kinda funny since I have nothing to confess. I hired the so-called super criminals as private security. Gotham can be a dangerous place after all. Anyone with an axe to grind with Thorne could have killed him, and I just so happened to be at the top of the list since I spoke with him personally. For both of these reasons I have been labeled as a crime boss, but I assure you, I seek legit enterprises." Minato spoke in a cordial manner, not letting on that he'd chosen the epithet for himself, and naturally it spread around almost like wildfire, and for some reason, Gordon couldn't help but ask himself if those words sounded natural or rehearsed. "That's so? What kind of legit enterprises are you aiming for?" Jim asked as he slowly lowered himself into his seat since he keeps a spare gun inside of his desk. The blonde man smirked as he answered, "How about mayor?" Jim wanted to scream in outrage and punch something, another crook that wanted to be mayor. Just great. At the very least he was upfront about his motivations. "Oh yeah? Why should you, of all people, be mayor?" Gordon asked suspiciously as the suspected mob boss sighed and set himself into an open seat across from the commissioner. "Would you believe me if I said that I was a victim of an unjust system? That I was falsely accused of a crime I didn't do? And I don't mean about Thorne's death. Regardless of my innocence, that crime followed me around like my shadow, and the people in charge made my life hard and miserable for it because they could. Even though I wasn't responsible, they tormented me and tried everything in their power to destroy me, just because they could. I look at this city and it reminds me of home. I see good people, powerless and unable to do anything about their situation. I see police trying to fight the good fight. And I see politicians and bureaucrats eating away at this city, like maggots feasting on a rotting corpse. I want to change all that. I want to make things better. To give people a fair chance, to give them more and better opportunities. That's what I want." At the end of the Kingpin's speech, Jim couldn't help but feel moved. He could easily tell that this man meant every word that he had said, and he would do everything in his power to carry through on his promises. Before the commissioner could form a response, Minato snapped his fingers, prompting Neo to plant a briefcase on Gordon's desk. Jim glanced at the duo before cautiously opening the locks with a click and then lifting the lid to peer inside. The contents appears to be files on numerous lawyers, judges, and politicians suspected to have mob ties but couldn't be arrested due to lack of evidence. "Take that as a gift, Commissioner, a little something from me to you. No strings attached whatsoever." The Kingpin spoke with a smile before giving a quick two-fingered salute as he exited the office with Neo waving bye-bye as she followed close behind her boss. Under normal circumstances, Gordon wouldn't accept anything, least of all a bribe, from suspicious sources. But this was a silver bullet. Without the legal support the numerous mobs and gangsters were receiving, it could severely cripple organized crime. He couldn't ignore this, and it didn't seem like this Kingpin was hiding any ulterior motives since he seemed rather upfront about his intent. It was time to scramble the GCPD, they had some arrests to make. Meanwhile, outside the Iceberg Lounge. "What have I gotten myself into?" muttered the form of Dinah Laura Lance, better known as Black Canary, who had successfully infiltrated the Iceberg Lounge. She was no stranger to undercover jobs, but she didn't like being a hostess in this joint. Forging the documents and references to get her hired was easy enough, plus her martial arts skills made her a shoo-in, since the Penguin staff was required to be capable of handling themselves in case of trouble. Understandable given the clientele. For some reason, Batman seemed utterly convinced that something big was happening here. According to his intelligence, both Two-Face and the ventriloquist were coming here much more frequently than normal, and the Kingpin was also rumored to be a patron here. And admittedly, his hunch was proven correct since Dinah frequently overheard the other waitresses gossiping about the man, most often about how handsome he looked and hoped they could give him a full core service. The things they whispered to each other would make even the most seasoned prostitutes blush red. For now though, she had to suck it up and monitor the situation. As soon as she found anything important or incriminating she was going to bail. "Oi. How about another round here?" shouted the form of one Harley Quinn. For crying out loud, this was her sixth drink. Just how much could she take? Dinah had to suppress a grimace as she put on her poker face and replied, "Be with you in a minute, sweetheart." Before going to get another bottle of booze for the bimbo clown. Though out of the corner of her eye, Dinah scanned the table that Harley was sitting at as she took in the other people sitting with her. Catwoman, renowned thief and rumored love interest of Batman. Poison Ivy, a plant-obsessed metahuman that could freely manipulate plant life. Killer Frost, an ice-using heat vampire. And finally an unknown thug of a woman that seemed to be a little too into the heavy metal scene, but she seemed like a heavy hitter. According to the other waitresses, they're apparently the Kingpin's private security, in short, hired muscle. Still, it seemed kind of strange how one suspected mob boss could control some highly skilled and potentially unstable criminals, emphasis on unstable in Harley's case. Unfortunately, just because he had hired repeat felons, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was automatically a criminal himself. She would have to keep a close eye for any evidence of foul play. After retrieving the next round of booze for the group, she approached their table with the sweetest smile she could muster. "Here you are, ladies. Anything else I can get for you?" she asked at the end, putting on her best customer service voice, her question earning a round of no thanks from the ladies present. For a quick moment, Dinah was having an internal debate with herself on if she should try and probe these ladies for information on their boss or just walk away and keep acting normal. The former part was gaining ground since these ladies were the best source of information available. "If you don't mind my asking, what's your boss like? I'm new here and all the other waitresses act like the Kingpin is a major heartthrob or something," she asked with a smile. "Ooh, so you want the deets, huh? Well, Mr. K is a major sweetheart. Just the other day he took me and Ivy shopping and he was such a gentleman the whole time. I almost cream myself every time he praises me," and Harley rambled on for a bit and then started listing off some sexual fantasies she wants to try with her boss, some of which involving whipped cream and strawberry or chocolate icing. Too much information for Dinah and not helpful for her investigation. All the while, Crush had her boots kicked up on the table, a cigarette in her mouth as she stared at the blonde woman with a sneer. "Hey, shorty. Don't you have someplace better to be?" she asked gruffly, her arms crossed beneath her bust as Dinah stiffened up and realized that she had lingered too long listening to Harley's nonsense. "Oh. Right. I'm sorry. You're right. I should be going now." Dinah spoke rapidly, mentally cursing herself for her blunder as she quickly retreated in order to avoid a scene and then felt a hand roughly grab her shoulder. The Black Canary stiffened up, her instincts telling her to roundhouse kick the offender, but she suppressed it and slowly looked over her shoulder and found that the one called Crush was now basically towering over her. "You smell weird to me. Like you've been on edge all night and your body screams that you're spoiling for trouble. And now you're fishing for info about the boss man. I don't like you one little bit." Crush spoke, voicing her suspicions as she leaned in close and inhaled the blonde woman's scent. "You're starting to sweat." Crush noted her hand tightening around Dinah's shoulder. The blonde heroine bit her lip to suppress a gasp of pain, her fight-or-flight instincts kicking in full force now. This Crush person was onto her, and it seemed that her cohorts were also watching her suspiciously now and seemed to be waiting to see how she would react. Dinah knew that one wrong move and her cover was blown now, if it wasn't already, that is. Crush leaned in close to the blonde woman's ear and whispered, "You wanna know about the boss? Best ask him yourself. But I don't think he's the kind looking for one-night stands, you bitch. Wait, what now? Get the fuck out of my sight, you hussy, or I'll show you what a real fisting is. And you won't like it." Crush spoke as she clenched her fist, making her leather gloves squeak and her knuckles crackle as she released the undercover heroine. Almost robotically, Dinah walked away, her body stiff and her heart thundering inside her chest at the close call. It seemed like she was mistaken for some random girl that wanted to get into their boss's pants. While she didn't like that idea, her cover was safe for the moment at least. She stopped for a moment when she heard a masculine voice speak. "Now Crush, is that any way to treat a lady?" Dinah slowly turned and found her target, the man himself, the Kingpin, speaking to the white-skinned woman. The punk in question snorted and replied, "Didn't seem like a lady to me. Seemed like some horny bitch looking to get some brownie points or shit." Dinah had to suppress a groan at that, being a heroine didn't give her much room for relationships or sex, but that was rude as hell. "I'll be the judge of that. That aside, it's not nice to bully people without good reason." The blonde man spoke as he patted Crush on the shoulder before approaching Dinah herself. This was it. First contact. She was now meeting her target. She just had to play it cool, learn what she could about him, and get out. He smiled at her and spoke monotonamically, "The Kingpin, at your service. My sincerest apologies for my security team. I hope Crush didn't hurt you." They can be a little overzealous, and a number of girls here have tried to make a pass at me, believe it or not. Oh, she could believe it, a handsome face and gentlemanly demeanor like that could make almost any woman swoon. But she wasn't going to let herself be duped that easily. It always pains me to see harm done to a woman. I think I should make it up to you for this. Maybe a nice dinner. The blonde man offered, which caused the black canary to smile. It seemed like she was having a stroke of good luck. Dinner would be a good chance to get him alone and probe for more information. Relevant information this time. I'd like that, sir. Treat me well and I'll show you a good time. She spoke and then paled when she realized what she had said. Where the hell did that last part come from? That wasn't something she would say to some random guy. The blonde man seemed to take it in stride as he spoke forward. I like that, though if you're seeking a fling, I'm not that kind of guy. No. 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 I didn't mean it like that. I just said the first thing that popped in my head. I'm not some loose girl or anything like that. She responded frantically, by God, what the hell was wrong with her? She was Black Canary. A world-class martial artist and heroine that could throw down with the best of them, and here she was acting like a nervous schoolgirl at prom. Ah. I can understand that. Sometimes I talk without thinking myself. Where and what time should I arrange for your pickup? He asked her, making her sigh in relief at how understanding and patient he was. Pick me up at 6 in front of my apartment. She asked, earning a nod from Minato as she scribbled down the needed address, which was actually a safe house provided by Batman, not that her target needed to know, and gave it to him. I don't think I got your name, miss. The blonde man inquired as he pocketed the slip of paper that had the needed address. My name is Elena. I look forward to seeing you again soon. She spoke, giving her false name as she left in a hurry, largely because she needed to get back to work and for some damn reason, she felt suffocatingly hot under the collar. When she departed, the blonde man smirked as he turned to his subordinates with a large grin. This was only the beginning, there was still much more to do and much more to come. Ivy, how goes that project I asked you to do? Minato asked as he approached their table with Crush trailing behind him. It's all coming together quite nicely. The first batches should be ready soon, due in no small part to my powers. You quite surprised me with this idea of yours. Poison Ivy spoke with a sensual smile. Her boss chuckled a bit since he himself was a bit surprised by it as he responded, indeed. A friend of mine once told me that you've got to plan 10 steps ahead of your opponent. I figured it was time to take some initiative. Oh boy. I can't wait for this. Mayor Hill is gonna crap himself when you pull out the big guns. I can't wait to see that bitch of a mayor get blown away. Harley spoke, almost jumping in her seat as she giddily clapped her hands. Unknown to them, Dinah had earlier placed a listening device under the table. It was pretty easy given how many times she had to go to and from that particular table. And everything they were saying was being fed directly to both the Bat computer and Oracle's clock tower. Needless to say, the next few days might be the most important in the history of Gotham City. End chapter 5. What if Naruto x Supergirl x Batgirl harem end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.